Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 131, Arizi Hana Agnath. As for that entity, I don't know much about them. I only know that the Beast Blood's head refers to them as the Ancients. Rainer expressed his willingness to cooperate with Marla's judgment on them. First, he didn't have a choice but to oblige. And second, he felt that the cultists' organization and the kingdom were two sides of the same coin. One side of which was shiny while the other looked rusty. Marla narrowed down her eyes after she heard Rainer talk about the Ancients. It seemed that she had connected a few dots in her head. But nobody in her team was willing to ask her. They knew there were a few things that the dear ranker couldn't share with them. It was out of the syllabus for the current ranking scale they were at. The kingdom wanted to control people to bring stability. The cultists wanted to destroy that stability in the name of freedom. And ironically, they controlled the Rouge rankers joining their fold to get that freedom. In the end, the ordinary rankers couldn't escape the leash no matter which organization they belonged to. Why should Rainer or these kids stretch their necks out for the organization that used them as pawns? Their capture by Marla's team was a blessing in disguise for them. Only Rainer had signed a binding contract with the Beast Bloods. So the kids had nothing to worry about. Had they quit upfront after joining Beast Bloods, they would be hunted down one day for betrayal. The cultists' organizations had their honor to maintain after all. But now that they have been caught and punished for it, the organization won't involve more resources to take care of them. It would just be a complete waste as all of them were only serving as pawns. 4 days after the battle between Aaron's team and the cultists. A 1.5-day journey to the city of Silvermoon was stretched to 3 days because Aaron's team had new members joining them in the middle. Aaron's team had to catch wild colts in the forest to accommodate the captured cultists' travel. And since the newly caught wild colts weren't meant for long travels, the travelers needed to take intermittent breaks. The cultists were still tied in runic chains, unable to cast spells or exert their mana outside. But they could move and perform daily activities in a controlled manner. Marla didn't let her guard down just because she was a dear ranker. She had ensured that all the protocols relating to the transfer of captured personnel were followed. The group finally saw a giant city wall that had dense vegetation covering its surface. It looked like someone had performed a wood magic spell on it to strengthen the architecture and grant it additional properties it may have. The city entrance was contrastingly small compared to the size of the city walls. A platoon of guards was manning the entrance and talking merrily with each other. The guards weren't humans. At least not all of them. There were some dark brown-skinned Feyruns among them who had pointy ears that would twitch as the cause of listening to something hilarious. There were also elves of other lineages like sun elves, moon elves, and snow elves. Then there were dwarfs as well as half-bloods that were a mix of two distinct gene pools. The guards saw that a bunch of people on colts were approaching the city gates at a steady pace as they were joking among themselves. It wasn't rare for the city of Silvermoon to have visitors. But the travelers' timing was odd. This was way past the usual dinner time. Normally, the visitors would ensure that they reach the city in the evening or at the break of dawn. So this uncalled-for visitation from strangers drew their attention. The platoon had already been on the guard as it had been briefed about the recent attacks on the travelers. Therefore, the guards were about to form a formation when they heard the known sound of city gates opening from behind them followed by a known voice of their captain. At ease, boys. They are our friends. Well, at least some of them are. So no need to panic and let them in. This was the voice of the on-duty platoon captain Arizona Iana Agnath. She was a deer ranker snow elf who looked like she had been bathed in light even when there was dark all around her. It felt like her clear and supple skin had a natural white glow. Ari had a beautiful face. She had curves at the right places but her features looked moderate. She looked to be in her early 20s but one couldn't really tell the number when it came to elves. The elves would mature at the same time and speed as humans. But then their age would stagnate. But this was the case with rankless humans and elves. The age stagnation didn't matter when rankers started walking on the ranking journey. Their progress in their paths would decide their lifespan. And humans had the advantage to tread faster in their ranking journey as compared to the elves. So the concept of age wasn't paid much attention in the ranking community. Long time no see, Ari. How you been? I see you've broken through deer rank already. It calls for a celebration. And you are not getting away this time. You know that, right? Marla greeted Ari with the kind of excitement she's rarely shown to anyone in LA. It seemed that the two adepts were very close to each other. The latter replied with tired expressions on her face. How many times have I told you? We elves don't stock our booze enough for your voracious drink fest. We only drink a sip or two for relaxation. Not like you who drink it for who knows what. TCH, TCH, TCH. I already told you your torn and tattered excuses won't work on me anymore. I want all of your Frostfo mail collection and then some other varieties. Hee. LA doesn't have good booze, you know. And all my stock has vanished. So I'm going to let myself go in your care. Marla was very excited to have her booze fest get going. But she was interrupted by her assistant shortly afterwards, breaking her drunk-like chain of thoughts. Adapt Marla. We have a few criminals to process first. Almera reminded Marla about her priorities that she had gotten skewed in the anticipation of getting dead drunk. So the latter gave a disappointing glare at her assistant before talking to her snow elf friend about the same. Meanwhile, Aaron was perplexed about something after hearing the platoon captain's name. Hamari. Arizona Iana Agnoth. Where have I heard this name before? Chapter 132, Agatha's Enslavement. So the guy's name is Rainer. Beast Bloods, huh? I've heard about them. But not much is known about their core practices. It's good that you guys caught. Ari was about to make a formal statement regarding the prisoners Aaron's team had brought with them but was stopped after seeing a kid on a cold with only an intact arm on him. The rest of his limbs were missing from their joints. The guy looked crestfallen in his chains. As if death would be a mistress he was willing to hug with his only one intact arm. What did you guys do to him? Ari had to ask. It's not like she hadn't seen a ranker getting amputated by another ranker. But the one who got amputated was just a kid. A ranker's code dictated that Aaron's team go easy on him even when he was in the wrong. Aaron happened to him. But he was not wrong in doing that. I mean, he was wrong in chopping the guy's limbs but he was not in his reasoning. Do you get it? I mean. Ken was replying with a serious face, trying to defend his battle buddy's actions. But it was not what the mutilator wanted from him at the time. Just shut the hell up, you. You are making my case worse here with your talk. Aaron wanted to fill the guy's mouth up with a bucketful of lava to shut him for the time being. In the end, Marla took over and explained the event in detail without any bias. Ari nodded her head before declaring her verdict. All right. We will send the prisoners to the city prison for the time being. A panel of judges will regulate their punishments as per the known crimes they've committed. The ace ranker is here to stay. He'll not get away that easily. But I don't think we have much on the kids. So they'll be given lighter punishments. Greetings, Adept Arizi Hannah. I was wondering if you could tell us what would happen to the ace ranker's lackeys. Aaron asked as soon as Ari gave them a brief about processing the criminals they had brought. He had a plan in mind and wanted to confirm something first. I'm only guessing here. But from what I know, the kids will have to serve a minimum of 10 years of enslavement to the city of Silvermoon. It may be more dependent upon the judging panel and their behavior. Rainer will have to face a minimum of 50 years of enslavement. His ranking journey is over with his damaged beyond repair monocore. So the 50 years will be like lifetime enslavement for him if he survives that long. The group of cultists didn't like that their punishments were being talked about in front of them. As if they didn't exist in the same space as their lawful captors. But they couldn't speak anyway. Their mouths had also been shut close by the runic pattern drawn over their cheeks by Adept Marla. A jolt would pass through the captives' tongues whenever they tried to open their mouths without permission. That's why they didn't open their mouths without permission the entire time they were traveling. 10 years of enslavement, huh? Are we getting rewards from the city of Silvermoon for taking care of the nuisance for them? Aaron asked with a slight bow. He was not sure who would make it worth it for him to spend his time and energy on a waste of time cultist catch and release, but he wanted his share for doing his work anyway. And he had another reason to ask the question as well. Rewards from the city of Silvermoon are indeed there. But they'll be given to Marla who would then distribute those as per your contribution. I'm guessing you have something on your mind with the way you are asking about these things. No need to feel shy, Aaron. Just tell me what do you want? All right then. I want Agatha to be enslaved to me with a binding contract. Everyone froze at Aaron's bold statement. They all felt that maybe Ari shouldn't have said no need to feel shy to this devious teen. The act was akin to leaving your door open while going outside so that the thief has an easy time robbing you. Agatha looked hatefully at the terrorist who had terrorized her. Then she got scared for her future if Aaron becomes her owner for at least 10 years. The guy was a freak. He would bomb girls without any hesitation. What would he do to them if they were his slaves? Agatha didn't want to find out the answer to that question. She tried to run away with all her might but the runic chains lit up and made her stand still at her place. Marla, the controller of those chains, didn't even look at the captive's futile attempt to run and let the show go on. Something much interesting was unfolding after all. Her apprentice never ceased to surprise her till now. And what makes you think I would agree to your request? Aaron, you are a student so you might not know. But enslavement is the biggest source of profits for city governments, approved by the kingdom. It's free labor with the only expense on the enslaved person's daily necessities. So giving a potential human resource away is a huge loss for any local government. It's all about economics in the end. If some of the city officials have their way, they would start a manhunt for even the pettiest of criminals and dish out maximum enslavement punishments to keep the city's budget in the profit. The criminal's imprisonment is part of your mission. You will get paid for the sanctioned capture by other means. Why would the city's administration allow a brat like you to take up their valuable resource all to yourself? No. The city officials won't let me. But you can, Adept Ari. I'm sure you must have a sway over the judgment. If you can plead from my behalf, they'll let me have the slave. And why would I do that? You know about rankers' codes, right? Equivalent exchange. What's in it for me? Well, for a starter, your life. Aaron looked straight in the adept ranker's eyes after he said that. He had finally remembered Ari from his past life. Chapter 133, Equivalent Exchange. Aaron looked straight in the adept ranker's eyes after he said that. He had finally remembered Ari from his past life. He had visited the city of Silvermoon when he was a good-for-nothing loser before the time reset. At that time, the then lousy berserker had heard an important tidbit. It was about a certain platoon captain of the city of Silvermoon whose tales of bravery and beauty were go-to topics for the citizens living inside it. Aaron had happened to hear one such tale from the group of drunkards sitting across from his lone table when he was inside a beat-up tavern. The tale was about Arizi Hannah Agnoth. First, the group talked about her beauty and then became sad over the fact that she had died. And the way she had died was also interesting to hear. Ari had died due to rushing in her ranking journey. She had used a D rank potion on herself while being at the E rank solid stage for an expedited breakthrough. In her defense, Ari had done that because she was stagnating as a ranker. She didn't want to stay in the E rank for years on end and reach the next rank crawling. If she waited any longer, her prospects would end at D rank. And she won't be able to break through into further ranks even after using external help. Because her life force would have gotten depleted by then. That's why Ari had decided to take a bold step. She somehow got her hands on a lost and partially incomplete potion recipe and ordered the best Poti-Oner she could find in the city of Silvermoon to make it for herself by signing a binding contract of confidentiality with them. The Poti-Oner had warned her that the recipe wasn't something that could be called a standardized model. Plus, it belongs to a lost school of Poti-Onering that didn't have many scholars associated with it. At their best, the Poti-Oner could only make the potion with half efficacy as compared to the original effect. And this was after the Poti-Oner made sure that the missing blanks are rightly filled with relevant details that belong to the lost potion making school. And half efficacy was not the only problem the incomplete potion would have. It would also cause unknown side effects due to there being no suitable neutralizing agent known by the Poti-Oner that could eliminate them. But Ari accepted the potioneer's clauses anyway. She was desperate and this potion was her only hope. In the end, she had used the potion to break through into D rank and surprised a lot of her peers. But her breakthrough came with a cost. Unbeknownst to her, her mana circuits and her mana core were slowly getting incompatible with each other. The process started slowly and it remained undetectable until it was too late. Arizi Hannah died by body implosion while she was participating in a battle with the cultist gang. She was executing a mana-heavy spell and that became a trigger for her mana core to go berserk. At first, the city guards fighting with her thought the cultists had executed a strange spell on her. Her body was brought back to the city of Silvermoon and an autopsy was done by a qualified panel of healers. The autopsy report gave out the real reason behind the platoon captain's death and everybody in the city became upset over that fact. Ari had a lot of admirers that spanned across males from various races and even females. She was one of the most important people in the city of Silvermoon after all. So when the news about Ari's cause of death was out and that Poti-Oner was somehow known by the masses, he was dragged out in the open beat up hard by them. His clothes were torn and he ran naked in the street before being saved by the city guards, who then tortured him some more before finally kicking him out of the city. People who participated in the guy's beating subconsciously knew the Poti-Oner wasn't really at fault in this case. But they had to vent out their feelings somehow. And the poor lab rat became the channel to release their frustration. People had a strange mentality. They would blame their healers for not curing them of ailments in the right manner. When it was their poor dieting habits that were the cause behind them in the first place. And they would blame their parents for failures their own lifestyle choices had brought them. Anyway. The death of the platoon captain Arizi Hannah, while she was battling it out with the cultists for the city's safety, had created a deep impression in the mind of the Silvermoon citizen. They had even created a statue of her that became one of the city's attractions points. But all of this was still a few years into the future in this timeline. Ari had just broken through her D rank. The incompatibility could still be resolved if treated in the right way. That's why Aaron brought the subject up to gain a slave for himself. Otherwise, he would have let the platoon captain die without thinking twice. And what do you mean by that? If this is some sort of joke. Ari's mood was getting fouler by the second after hearing Aaron's wild claim. An F-rank teen was talking about a D ranker's life and death. Of course, the snow elf felt offended. Please hear me out, Adept Ari. I'm saying that for your benefit. I'm a Poti-Oner who is trained by a Seer rank healer. I can sense an ailment through my mana sense, and your presence here feels like your mana circuits and mana core are in a war against each other. From Master Marla's talk, you've just broken through the D rank, yes. But something feels off about the mana signature you are radiating. It is not stable. I don't think the incompatibility between the two is apparent yet, but I'd advise you don't wait until it does. Otherwise, you would implode while executing a spell someday. Here's my suggestion. Please hire a capable healer and ask them to check up on your current condition. If what I say is true, you can use your weight in the city to grant me a kingdom-sanctioned slave. If not, I'm ready to pay up to 20,000 extals to you. How's that for an equivalent exchange? Chapter 134, When a spell stops being a spell. How's that for an equivalent exchange? The butcher oozed confidence when he put forward his terms as if that poor lass was in his bag as a slave. Agatha wanted to slap the wretched teen in front of her. He was bartering with Ari while treating her as a form of goods. What makes you think that I have this issue, Aaron? Ari didn't want to believe the words coming from a teen's mouth, but his statements didn't sound too absurd to her. The Poti-Oner had already told her about the possibility of side effects. Maybe the slowly increasing incompatibility was part of that side effect. But she still had to confirm her doubts. She couldn't just blindly trust Aaron on his speculations. Aaron gave her a detailed account of what he had observed. Of course, he twisted some logic and mixed truths with conjectures. But when he was done answering the question, everyone who was witness to that answer believed him. All right, Aaron. You have a deal. If what you say is true and I'm indeed diagnosed with the issue you talk about, then you can take that lass as your legal slave. But I want compensation of 40k extals in case your predictions become invalid. Agreed. Agreed. Aaron didn't have a reason to say no to Ari's request. He even would have accepted the deal of 100k extals had she claimed it. It was not like he was guessing her ailment. So he didn't have to pay a dime to her anyway when she finds out what he said to be real. All right. Guards, take our prisoners to their cells. And close the city gates. It's about time we go inside. Let's go, Marla and company. The city administration has booked rooms for you at the Lamb Arms. I'll take you there myself. Ari took Aaron's team to the inn they were supposed to be staying in. Aaron and Steve were exhausted by the long travels while Almero looked tired. Only Marla went outside with Ari for some drinks after they dropped the rest at the inn with the weird name. Aaron was delivered food to his room and realized why the inn was called the Lamb Arms Inn. The inn had served him lamb stew, roasted lamb leg, and lamb ragu for his dinner. Aaron had ordered plenty of food for two. The other serving was of course for Reen. She had kept quiet during the whole journey like Aaron had asked her to do. It was about time to treat her to some lamb meat for her patience. Reen separated herself from Aaron and manifested into a gorgeous beauty with curvy features. She had learned to eat human food now. She still preferred to eat her meat raw by turning it into a soluble inside her ball of slime. But over the weeks she had learned to eat human food in a humanly way. Aaron was leaving no stone unturned to educate her about urban etiquettes. Are you going to let me have that girl for food, Aaron? I can feel that she is different from normal humans. Can't wait to digest her whole. Hee hee. Reen said while picking a roasted lamb leg and taking a huge bite from it. Aaron mirthlessly smiled before shaking his head. I'm not going to have a legal slave just so that you can eat her, Reen. She'll be very useful for my experiments. But that is for the future. Right now I want to use her for information gathering. I'll also ask Jack to accommodate her into his shop so that she can help us run a seamless business. Aaron said this and stopped to take a bite out of lamb ragu. He liked the flavor of the dish. It was enough to tell him that the Lamb Arms Inn was not something an ordinary adventurer or traveler could afford. At least the city administration of the Silver Moon was not as thrifty as that of Ozen's. Aaron thought to himself before being interrupted by Reen's next words. I know how and why businesses are run from your memories. But I still don't understand why humans run these businesses. If they want to eat, they can just hunt and have food, right? Why earn money when you can secure your food more directly? Reen threw another question at Aaron which he didn't have an answer to. He knew she was just rambling but decided to clear some of her doubts. Reen, humans see a way past food and daily necessities. That can be our boon or bane depending upon how we make use of such vision. For example, human rankers need ranking techniques and spells to become a step above normal humans. And for humans to get them, they need to earn money and resources. Without the money to support them, I don't think many rankers can progress further in their journey. And we get these techniques and spells for free either. Humans are more vicious than beasts in that some of them would start killing their own kind if these techniques are readily available to them. Aaron took a spoonful of lamb stew in his mouth after saying that. He thought that he had solved Reen's doubts but was soon proven wrong. By the techniques you say? But why do you buy these techniques? Don't you have your own? And the very first human who became a ranker. How did they start their ranking journey when they didn't have any techniques or spells? Aaron wanted to answer Reen's questions but was soon frozen to silence. He had never really thought about why humans and other races like humans needed techniques and spell formations when the mana beasts didn't. Can humans enter or break through into the ranking levels without any technique involved? Can they cast spells without ever learning about them? Suddenly Aaron thought of the cultists. These heretics were pursuing long-lost paths of magic that differed from today's practices. They were often unconventional and made little sense. But maybe there was more to these lost paths than met the eyes. Aaron started replaying his fight with the cultist in his mind and recalled how Agatha transformed in front of him. Reen, you witnessed Agatha's beastly transformation spell with my senses. How did it differ from the normal spell? Aaron asked his demon beast while looking earnestly at her. Reen put what remained of the roasted lamb leg down on her plate and thought about it for a while before replying to her master's question. Should we still call something a spell when it stops being a spell? Reen looked at Aaron innocently. But she didn't understand why Aaron dropped the fork from his hand at her statement. When a spell stops being a spell. Aaron mumbled to himself as loads of thoughts started swirling inside his head. Chapter 135, Lucky Encounters. Aaron mumbled to himself as loads of thoughts started swirling inside his head. Were the cultists right in pursuing the heretic paths all along? More importantly, if the rankers walk on their ranking journeys like beasts sans the ranking techniques and spell scrolls, will they face the same bottlenecks they've always faced? The questions popped up in Aaron's mind like wild mushrooms. Then he compared Agatha's body transformation with his attribute of shape-shifting. The ability he had gained by merging with his demon beast had also stopped being a spell. Aaron's shape-shifting worked on his willpower. It was influenced by his thoughts and only used the mana from his mana core as a driving force. He didn't have to activate the mana circuits in a specific way to initiate the shape-shifting. The ability wasn't totally in his control yet because of it. He didn't have a set template to follow. But Aaron knew with enough practice and willpower, he would be able to take up any shape he wanted to one day. A spell stops being a spell when it becomes an integral part of your existence. Mana beasts had innate spells that worked on the same principle. They didn't have to study ranking techniques or practice spells to use them. They just knew what their innate spells were. But what was stopping humans from having their innate spells? Nobody could answer Aaron's questions because he knew some of them were taboo subjects within the ranking communities. His questions were the same ones that the cultists would ask rankers when they were confronted by them for their actions. Aaron didn't want to come across as a supporter of cultists' ideologies out in the open. That would be detrimental to his future goals. What he needed was pre-processed data on the subject. And he had a person in his mind to give him that. Even if that person wouldn't know much, Aaron would make sure that the secrets they carry in their bodies come out in the open for them. Reen, you can't eat Agatha. At least not anytime soon. We've just found another use for her. The demon beast was still thinking of having more human nuggets as she wolfed down the lamb meat. Somehow eating a human dinner had increased her appetite instead of getting satiated. But we can find some other humans for you to target in the city by tomorrow. Every city has its share of scumbags after all. Yay. The demon beast registered her happiness through her words and actions too as she raised her hands. Aaron anyway was going to roam the city tomorrow. They were supposed to stay in the city for a few days before making it back to LA. Marlo was yet to confirm the other part of their missions to them yet. So all they could do till then was to wait and explore the city in the meantime. Aaron was hoping he doesn't have to roam the streets with Ken in tow. Sadly, his hopes were meant to be crushed under the protagonist's foot. Knock knock knock. Knock knock, bang. Yo, Aaron. Get up, man. How can you sleep till now? It's 9 a.m. We need to buy some souvenirs from the city. Aaron. Aaron Idril. Hello. Aaron was rudely awakened from his deep sleep. He heard persistent banging on the door of his inn's room followed by his name taken by Ken like the latter was finding joy in chanting it. Arg. Fuck this guy. Get the fuck away from me you. Haha. I've run out of abuses for this madman. You want me to eat him? Reen asked innocently in his mind. She woke up with him. She liked to sleep in her slime form on Aaron's chest. You know, that's not a very bad idea. I'm considering it. Nah. The guy has many uses for him to get wasted like this. I'll have to let him live. For now. Reen, from now on you are forbidden to tempt me into killing Ken. Because one of these days, I might just say yes prematurely. You've gotten pretty crafty yourself over these days, but don't think that I don't see your agenda in helping me. But the question remains. What should I do with him now? I'll just pretend to be in deep sleep. Maybe he'll go away on his own. Thought Aaron and laid back on his bed again drawing the sheets over him. Aaron, Ace Almera is also with me. She is waiting for you too. Get up already, man. Give me a break already? I've socialized enough these days, like seriously. Aaron had to get up and get the door after hearing that Almera too was waiting with Ken on the other side of the door. He couldn't afford to offend an ear-anchor over his petty need to avoid Ken. Reen merged with her master as Aaron got up from his bed. Since their merging, Aaron's and Reen's mana signatures had gotten synced. They didn't need to always keep themselves on guard about Reen's existence getting exposed anymore. As long as Reen didn't make things too obvious, she would stay undetected by almost all the rankers. Sigh. Come on in as I get ready. Aaron couldn't get any less enthusiastic even if wanted to after seeing Ken's bright smile. He couldn't even pretend to return the smile in response at this point. Almera was just standing there with her hands folded in front of her. Aaron was wondering why Almera wanted to accompany them, but he didn't bother to ask. The girl acted aloof. The butcher wasn't in the mood to soothe her ego by asking her. He had an ego of his own to maintain after all. Ken acted as the glue that would make two opposing magnets dubbed as Aaron and Almera stay in place together. He would effortlessly shift his talks between the two to keep the conversation flowing. A sure-shot weapon every protagonist has in their arsenal. Their talk spells. Aaron thought in his mind and shook his head as he got ready for his forced outing with the two. The trio started their city exploration soon afterwards. The entire city was bustling with structured shops and chaotic open markets getting crowded by humans, elves, and sporadic dwarves. To Aaron, it looked like the number of merchants was more than the buyers themselves. The trio bought some souvenirs for themselves from a well-known shop. But then Ken had his lucky encounter and bumped into an elf girl when they were about to visit another place. The two got to talking and spent a few minutes there standing right in the middle of the shop's traffic. In the end, the elf girl was smitten by Ken's personality and vision. She gave him her ID stone details so that he could contact her. And she also told him where he can find her in case he wants to explore the city with her. The latter kept the details to himself. But it seemed that he wasn't going to contact her anytime soon. But someone else in Ken's group was paying very close attention to the group's interaction. Oh geez. Would you look at the time? It's 4:45 Ken in the SPM. The shapeshifter had a cunning grin on his face as the group bid adieu to the girl. Chapter 136, Doing an Elf P1. I thought you were just going to ignore me when I told you I'll be here by the Moonview Lake. But I'm glad you showed up, Ken. Lensikaran was glad Ken decided to show up just when she thought he wouldn't. She had gone out on a limb with the guy by inviting him this late at night to a place people seldom visited at this hour. There was something about Ken that had attracted her to take this bold step. And she was glad she did. Because the guy looked extremely handsome and charming in the moonlight. He looked slightly different from his appearance in the morning. But she didn't put much thought into it, subconsciously thinking it was the effect of seeing the guy at night. Pleasure's all mine, Lensa. But I was wondering what could we explore so far into the night when the entire city is about to sleep. Lensa was a sun elf and had dark brown skin. Still one could imagine a tinge of red appearing on her cheeks after hearing Ken's remark. She tried to come up with a reason, but the Ken saved her from her misery with his next words. Hee. No need to panic. I came here knowing we wouldn't get to see much of the city, didn't I? What does that tell you? I'm not sure how we clicked so instantly. Part of me feels this is just some kind of a dream. But if it is, I don't want to wake up from it. At least not before I get to know you better. Lensa was awestruck by Ken's glib tongue. She felt it was effortless to talk to him. Ken would carry on the conversation like they had known each other for years now. The couple walked under the moonlight as they shared a little of their life stories with each other. Somehow Lensa felt the Ken of now was even more of a smooth talker than Ken of the morning when they first met. Lensa was looking gorgeous in her skin-hugging black leather pants and white cotton tunic top. She was a beautiful girl with all the right facial features. Her nose looked a little smaller, but that only added to her cuteness. Ken on the other didn't look as awesome as he always did. It was as if Ken was working on 80% visual appeal today. But that still didn't stop him from gaining the young lady's admiring glances. There was nobody to be found at the scene apart from the young couple when Ken led Lensa behind a big oak tree. Then he rested his back on the trunk of the tree and pulled Lensa close to him. What are we doing here, Ken? Ken was asked by the girl he just pulled over himself in a hushed voice. She looked uncomfortable at first being this close to a boy she never met before today. But Ken was rubbing her back with his palms like he was patting a scared rabbit. And that did the trick. You know what we are doing, Lensa. Can't we both stop pretending to talk about random stuff and just enjoy each other's warmth? I feel confident we can. It's because you've made me realize that you don't need to know someone for long to make them enter your heart. The heart will open itself up without any resistance when you meet the right person. For me, you are the right person now. What do you think about me? Ken smooth-talked Lensa while continuing his back rubs. All this while he stared right into the elf girl's eyes. Oh, Ken. I feel the same. I do. Don't know why. I'm relieved, dear. Now let's make things official by placing a seal of approval, alright. You know what that is, right? What? What is the seal of approval? Lensa had understood what Ken was getting at. But she tried to man her last line of defense before things started to heat up. But she was doing a poor job at that. Here. This is the seal of approval I'm talking about. Receive it well. Ken placed his lips on Lensa as soon as he was done speaking. The girl tried to back away but her resistance was feeble. As if she didn't mean it. And that feeble resistance too was washed up when the waves of ecstasy started hitting the shore that was Lensa's mind. She had to admit that her new partner was very good at what he was doing. A few moments after they began lip-locking, Lensa gently embraced her lover, leaning on him to provide him better access to his roaming hands. Once they were both in the heat, Lensa became restless and started pressing her body more onto Ken. She was eager to feel the warmth of his body. There's no need to be so hasty, my elf beauty. I am not going anywhere anytime soon. Though I might come sooner than I need to. Hee hee. Ken chuckled after he made that pun. This is all your fault, Ken. Lensa's face flushed experiencing her state. Now that you've lit this fire inside me. There's no way it would get extinguished easily. Is that so? Aaron chuckled before coming close to his partner and whispering into her ears. Then I'll just have to add more oil into this fire myself and let it consume both of us. I'm willing. Lensa gave her approval to Ken's advances and started to frantically kiss on his neck and his exposed collarbone. Meanwhile, Ken's hands had slipped downward to grab something very mushy. Ken started pressing Lensa's butt cheeks as if he was carefully making a wheat dough. He felt that he was trying to grab the water in a tangible form. Ken let his shirt buttons get unbuttoned by Lensa as he started to unfasten the hook of the latter's leather pants. He quickly pulled the pants down just enough to get the butt cheeks out. Lensa was startled by the cold wind grazing her naked butts. But soon she felt the warmth she needed to fight that cold. Ken had started his handiwork right away. Chapter 137, Doing an Elf P2. Ken had started his handiwork right away after Lensa's pants were pulled down. He tried inserting one of his fingers into her butthole as soon as he found it. Lensa wasn't expecting her rear entrance to be breached like this at that time. As a result, the hole puckered up and made it difficult for Ken's finger to gain an entry. Relax, dear. It's just us. Ken tried to comfort her while he traced the edges of her butthole with his fingers. Her pussy had gotten moist by then and some of the pussy juices had made it till the rear entrance. Ken was using that liquid as a lubricant to soothe his entrance in advance. What? Why are you trying to put your finger in there? There's a better place nearby, you know. Lensa wanted Ken to excite her pussy instead of what he was doing right now. But Ken's finger was adamant in entering the first cave it had touched upon from behind. Ken kissed Lensa again to ease her tension down there. Then he used the finger of his other hand to enter the pussy hole from behind. Lensa was ready for this. She was craving for this. So she allowed easy access to her pussy by adjusting herself better. She spread her legs apart and squatted a little to allow for a deeper exploration than before. Now that she had gotten excited, Ken used that opportunity to coat his finger in Lensa's pussy juices. Then she sent the soldier in for another march, hoping that this time things would be different. And that hope was not in vain. The soldier succeeded in his mission of breaching the rear entrance. Ken, you are. Just enjoy the ride, Lensa my dear. You are doing great. Ken. I need to tell you, something. This would be my first time for both the holes. So you'll have to be gentle with me. Lensa made a shocking revelation to Ken. She was a virgin. A teen elf of Lensa's age hasn't done it yet. She was indeed special. Usually, almost all elves lived a liberated lifestyle. And they were used to starting their sexual exploration early. It didn't matter to them if their partners were elves or anyone else as long as they would connect with them. That's why it was surprising for Ken to find out that he was dealing with a virgin elf. But soon that surprise turned into a radiant smile. Ken understood why Lensa approached him. She was probably looking for some handsome stranger to lose her V-card. And she had found him in Ken. A virgin, huh? I haven't had a virgin in a long time. And this is a virgin elf. So this would be the first time for me as well. Hee hee. Ken thought to himself quickly and nodded at Lensa before continuing his smooches. Seeing that Ken was busy with her twin buns and not giving up on them anytime soon, the virgin elf started to fondle her breasts. All while responding to Ken's lip locks. She had taken out her twin peaks out of her tunic top, thanks to her long neck opening that was only secured by the net of thick threads. All she had to do was unfasten those threads to allow her ample breasts to pop out. Lensa was a virgin but she was still an elf. She knew what her body wanted at the time and knew how to get it. The girl had dropped her previous hesitation. Ken explored both her holes with his fingers. Lensa's pussy juices were getting produced in abundance. A distinct smell of that juice was making its presence known in the surrounding area. Lensa felt the need to even the field. So she started to unfasten Ken's pants as well. Soon the guy's boner was out in the open. Lensa gasped after feeling Ken's size down there. But she didn't back away from the challenge. She had heard from her friends that the first time was a little painful. So she just wanted to be done with those before she could really enjoy the act from that point onwards. Lensa started stroking Ken's thick meat rod with her hand while her pussy and butthole were being explored by Ken's nimble fingers. They had started exploring every nook and cranny of the elf's secret valley by then. Lensa dear, do you know what is the best way to please a man? Ken stopped what he was doing and asked his partner. Lensa was all ears. Her silence hinted to Ken to continue. But she kept on playing with the guy's stick and balls. Yes. That's the way. Stroke some more. But as I said, there's a better way to please a man. Suck my rod, Lensa. And suck it good. Give me the best virgin blowjob an elf has to offer. Lensa raised her eyebrows after hearing Ken's demands. The guy sure knew what he wanted and how he could get it from her. Now she had to perform well in her first blowjob. Her pride as an elf was on the line. So Lensa went down on her partner. Most of their clothes were still on. But it didn't look like this was going to end as a quickie. Lensa followed Ken's lead and sucked on his rod as her life depended on it. She also sucked on his balls upon his instructions. She couldn't say she was enjoying the process. But Ken's approval encouraged her to keep going. Ken nut soon inside Lensa's mouth while deep-throating her. His jizz went straight in without any drop spilling out. But surprisingly, Ken's rod didn't go down even after nutting so much. Lensa started doubting her sex ed after witnessing that. But was soon pulled up from her thoughts physically and metaphorically by her partner. Hee. I'm just excited to be with you, Lensa dear. Your beauty needs at least this much respect from my meat. Ken started undressing after saying that. Then he laid his clothes on the ground nearby. His intention couldn't be any clearer. Elves like to stay in nature anyway. So not having four walls to cover her didn't become a mental obstacle for Lensa even when it was going to be her first time. Rather, she preferred it that way. She joined her human partner in his activities. She let him undress ever so slowly before getting completely naked. Lensa's elf psyche kicked in and she felt like this was her natural state. The girl was led by her lucky admirer as she laid down over the makeshift mattress. It was about time Lensa became a real woman. Chapter 138, Doing an Elf P3. It was about time Lensa became a real woman. Ken got over her and started kissing her passionately. Ken first fondled Lensa's boobs nicely. He sucked on the nipples one at a time while he pressed and fondled the other mountain. The girl's young tits were not that big. But they were still big enough for Ken to play with them without any dissatisfaction. But Ken was soon done with playing with Lensa's twin peaks. He now wanted to conquer the girl's wet region down south. Ken slowly made Lensa spread her legs apart with the nudges of his hands. The elf girl's pink paradise was ready for a visitor. Seeing her welcoming position, Ken began caressing her bottom lips with his magic fingers, causing Lensa's body to shiver with delight. Ah. Yes. There. Ken started moaning with her eyes closed. Her body grew increasingly warmer as her lady hole was getting excited due to the perfect massage it was reviewing. Lensa's moist creek was spread open soon after. Ken's fingers started wreaking havoc at the place. He had specifically focused on her clit. Ah. Yes. That's it, dear. The elf girl's body trembled in the ultimate bliss she had ever felt. Her moans were filled with passion and excitement. Ken's fingers had set the stage. Now it was time for the hero's lil hero to make an appearance. Ken adjusted his dick's position as he got over Lensa. The latter had spread her legs wide apart so that her cave's first ever visitor would have an easier entry. Ken pierced Lensa's pink heaven wide open with his divine-like rod. The latter's body spasmed as soon as she had her penial penetration. Her pussy had already started releasing ample amounts of juices to make her first time as comfy for her as possible. Lensa opened her eyes wide in shock. She had a look at Ken's lil Ken. At that, she felt that it was big. But what she felt inside her cunt was even bigger than that. Ken didn't show the first timer any mercy and rammed his hot into her even hotter wet heaven. The elf girl felt the tremor of that impact in her soul. Ah. You scoundrel. Ah, you should have given me some time so I could prepare. Lensa loudly voiced her discontent at Ken's ungentlemanly behavior. Her pussy started leaking red blood to declare that she had been deflowered. Things would have been much worse if I told you. You would have felt even more pain and discomfort than now. Because then you would know the time it was heading your way. Ken acted like his scoundrel-like behavior was for Lensa's sake and smiled amiably. I just can't hate this guy, she mumbled back with a mirthless smile. Ken chuckled in response. This time he didn't fail to give a heads up. Brace yourself, dear. Let's take you to the most beautiful place. Ken soon grabbed her curvy hips from both sides and started thrusting his rod in and out. The pain Lensa felt at her nether region receded and was replaced by waves of pleasure. More, Ken. Push it harder. Lensa's pleasure-driven moans soon filled the surroundings. She felt her body was being immersed in a pool of liquefied mix of emotions. Ken could only oblige at his partner's demands. He started fucking her with sharp thrusts in successions. Lensa's butt and her soul felt the impact of those wild thrusts. More. Ken. More. Go deeper. Lensa made that typical and almost impossible to fulfill demand every woman in the heat was known to make. She was telling Ken to grow his dick in the middle of the session so that her thirst for rougher fucking could be satisfied. But surprisingly, Ken seemed to have satisfied that demand. Suddenly, she felt his dick size had stopped being what it was a few moments ago. The pressure on her pussy's inner walls told her that their visitor had gone through a growth spurt. Lensa subconsciously explained to herself that it was her excitement that was making this phenomenon. She stopped thinking after that and indulged in her first coital experience. It wasn't long before Lensa came hard. She was a squirter. She squirted so much that the clothes beneath the couple's body were heavily drenched. Lensa knew that she also had a urine discharge at the time along with her pussy juices. The moment of ecstasy got over soon for the elf girl and she felt embarrassed about her first messy time. Lensa quickly executed a water-based spell to make all her juices disappear in the thin air. Then she looked at her partner, expecting to see a disgusted face. But her worries were soon put to rest with Ken's next words. Don't worry, dear. It's fine. If you've experienced this much bliss, then I should consider this as my honor. Now, shall we continue? There's more. Haha. Of course. But only if you want. Lensa had asked her question with a shaky voice. And she was soon put into a dilemma by Ken's wishes to continue their act some more. Part of her didn't want to indulge in this rigorous activity because her body demanded rest. And part of her wanted to say yes because her soul craved even more of what she had felt just now. In the end, the latter part won the battle and Lensa nodded at Ken. The duo soon started its next round of bonding and intimacy. The young elf lady cummed equally hard the second time. She felt that her throat had gotten parched due to all those activities of dehydration. But the white knight was still not satisfied. His rod was still as hard as ever. Lensa didn't think her wet cave could be any more accommodating to that tireless rod god. Fortunately or unfortunately, her pussy's role was over. Because Ken now wanted to take Lensa's anal virginity too. Lensa, my dear, what do you say about this? I heard elves are always looking for new experiences. Ken pointed the tip of his rod to Lensa's rear canal and asked. The girl had already stopped thinking about where to draw the lines for the first time. So she welcomed the former suggestion with open arms and legs. Ken used Lensa's newly produced pussy juices as lube and made his lil member enter an even tighter place than before. Lensa rolled her eyes at the widening of her rear entry. By now, she had started to actively look for pleasure in pain. And the young lady found what she was looking for sooner than she had expected. Ken didn't leave her pussy feeling left out either as he rubbed the clit with one finger and inserted another finger in her wet hole. Soon, Ken told her to assume a doggy style so he could look at his thick meat going inside and coming out of her rear entry. He also started slapping her ass after he found his rhythm. Ken didn't think Lensa could have a wilder orgasm than what she had felt for the first time. But he was soon proven wrong. The lady squirted again, in abundance. Lensa could not keep on continuing this activity any further. She was physically and mentally well past her saturation point. So she declared her retirement. Only then did she see Ken's rod loosening its stiffness. Lensa had to admit. She had the best first-time experience she could ask for, thanks to Ken's dominant yet amicable attitude. He had created a deep impression within her psyche because of it. Chapter 139, Misadventure. Going back in time a little. Right after Lensa left the trio alone at the city market. Wow, dude. I think the elf girl is falling for you. She was telling you she visits Moonview Lake at the full moon and today would be no different. That's an invitation for you to join her if you ask me. Aaron gave a firm pat on Ken's shoulder after he got back to his team. Almera also smiled at Ken before saying, Ken, I think you should consider joining that beautiful elf. An elf's affection is not easy to gain. The ear ranker also encouraged the boy to go on a date with Lensa. But the boy himself wasn't sure. He expressed his concerns. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but look at the city and its people. The Feyruns carry a very large weight around here. It would be bad for all of us if things go wrong between me and Lensa. Ken was an airhead when it came to a few things. But he wasn't stupid. He had already figured out who was the boss in the city of Silvermoon. And he wasn't ready to put himself in harm's way just to get on a date with an elf girl. But Aaron kept on encouraging the guy. He also used Almera's opinions a few times that worked to his advantage. Finally, the White Knight said yes to the Dark Knight's suggestions. Almera soon bid adieu to her juniors. She figured they'll need some alone time to take some guy stuff between them. This was the moment Aaron was waiting for. He changed his direction after finding out there were a bunch of taverns that sold elf ales at the opposite side of where they were heading. Ken didn't want to drink, but Aaron wouldn't have no for an answer. Aaron and Ken got drunk heavily after finding a tavern. Ken thought Aaron was on a drinking spree today, as the latter had already drunk twice more than him. And yet, it seemed that only Ken was feeling the drunken high while Aaron was still in control of his senses. Ken felt the F-rank ale that they had just now was the most potent drink he ever had. He had only recently started drinking beers. But the elf ale was a huge step up from that stage. The White Knight soon reached his limits. He thought he should close his eyes to just relax in that drunken stupor. And the guy immediately followed the self-advice. Ken didn't remember what happened next after this point. He was too hammered to even breathe normally. His breathing pattern had gotten erratic as a result. Aaron looked drunk. But he had sent that F-rank ale to Reen's way so that she could keep it out of his system. That's why the butcher was in full control of his senses despite savoring one of the most potent F-ranks drinks he knew of. Aaron supported Ken in standing up and led him to an abandoned alley that had nothing at its other end. He dropped the latter's body as soon as he confirmed nobody was looking out for them. Then Aaron went back to the Lamb Arms. He made sure to meet up with Almera and told her that Ken had gone to the Moonview Lake to meet up with Lensa and have his date. Aaron also told Almera that he and Ken had drunk a little to make the latter's pre-date jitters go away. The ear-ranker laughed at that sentence. She could see that the duo's little drinking game had been played for longer than they should have, considering Aaron's current condition. A drunken condition that he had faked masterfully. Not just with his acting, but also taking Reen's help in influencing the functions of his internal organs, so that it would be like he was dead drunk. Aaron retired to his assigned room soon after that planned encounter with the ear-ranker. He needed a witness that would testify that he was at the Lamb Arms, sleeping his ass off in his room at the time Ken had gone to meet Lensa. Aaron slipped off from the inn as soon as he made sure that there was nobody to keep track of his activity. Then he again went to the alley he had dumped the White Knight at. "Reen, can you control my appearance to make it look like him?" Aaron asked Reen in his mind after finding the guy where he had left him. Of course, he had his face hidden with the mask. He wasn't in full control of his shape-shifting abilities yet. So he asked his demon beast if she could help. Or if they could work together to achieve the intended result. "You want me to eat him, Aaron?" Reen asked with a tinge of hope reflected in her voice. She could finally get to have her favorite food if her master gave her a go. After all, she had to eat her victims to shapeshift into them impeccably. Someday. But not tonight. I just want you to help me take the same form as this guy. Alone we both would have some problems. But I'm counting on both of us working together to make this happen. Wouldn't it be easy if I just ate him? Nobody would know what we had done here anyway. You don't understand, Reen. You are still naive in your thinking if you take everything at face value. Try to see past what you can see in front of your eyes. I'm sure this ass-face has some defense mechanism active on him that would get triggered as soon as he was in any real danger. The retaliation of that mechanism should be able to hurt you if not outright kill you. I'm saying that because I don't see how an Earl House is comfortable sending their important scion alone without any security detail. The fact that nobody is protecting him overtly and covertly solidifies my theory. And second, we don't want to create more mess than we want to in this situation. We are not blessed with this guy's luck after all. I know that we are not strong enough for a frontal retaliation. And I also know that we cannot afford to get careless even when we feel that the coast is clear for us. But rest assured, the wicked survive because they can't be trapped for their misadventures. He said Aaron, before ordering his demon beast to help him take Ken's form. They had to try a few times before the appearance largely matched that of the White Knights. There were some subtle differences, but Aaron was sure those would go unnoticed under the Knight's veil. He was also counting on the fact that Lensa and Ken had only met briefly. Like this, Aaron pulled off doing the deed with Lensa while acting as Ken. And he was counting on the elf girl's wrath to punish Ken after the way he parted from her. Chapter 140, Devon Corinne. The next day after Lensa's defloration. Afternoon 3 p.m. Where is that human brat, Ken Riverine? Does he think he can do whatever he wants with our girls just because he has the backing of an earl? A loud voice boomed in the middle of the Lamb Arms Inn's lobby. The patrons saw a huge crowd of elves creating a fuss at the receptionist's desk. "Sir, I cannot allow you to barge into our inn without prior notice or reservation. If you want to meet with our guests, I can send someone to their rooms and arrange a meeting for you." Thankfully, the receptionist was also an elf man who seemed to be in his 40s. So he tactfully handled the crowd while sounding polite. But he didn't have to walk on the thin line anymore. That was because a certain dear ranker, who happened to be at the lobby, had come to talk to them after hearing a familiar name through the elf's mouth. "Excuse me. Name's Marla. Why are you looking for Ken Riverine?" Marla asked the guy who looked to be the leader of the elf crowd. The guy wanted to lash out at the one who asked the question. But his better judgment stopped him after his mana sense sensed something dangerous coming from the woman who stood in front of him with a leisurely attitude. Marla had purposely released a hint of her mana signature to make a silent warning to the ear ranker guy. And that deterrence was enough for the guy to readjust his speech and stance before replying to her question. "Ma'am, my name is Devon Corinne. Forgive our rude behavior in your presence. We only wish to talk to the young man named Ken Riverine. It's regarding the injustice my niece Lensa Corinne faced because of her relationship with the guy." Marla came to realize that her apprentice must have gotten involved in a lover's dispute after listening to Devon's explanation. She couldn't interfere in this petty matter by using her ranking status, especially when she had much larger fishes to fry. Therefore Marla allowed Devon and a few of his mates to visit the inn rooms assigned to her team. She gave them Ken's room number. But the dear ranker asked Devon to call forth Aaron and Almera as well when they meet Ken. She trusted her assistant's judgment in handling this matter. "Get the fuck out, Riverine brat. And receive your ass whooping for treating my niece like some cheap whore." Ken heard a series of noisy bangs on his room's door followed by an angry voice. He could barely open his eyes and his ability to hear things were also affected. So he heard the knocks and the guy's voice in -2x reduced speed. He had barely found his way to his room this morning from a place that was not very far from the Lamb Arms Inn. He didn't know what he was doing there or how he got there. He couldn't remember anything after his drinking spree with Aaron. But Ken couldn't be bothered about all that. His head was spinning like crazy and his body felt like he was buried in the sand. That's why he somehow made it back to his room before crashing on the bed. The White Knight just let his sleep fix his current condition. But the sudden interruption by Devon's knocks foiled his plans to sleep through his predicament. He had to get up against his will because he had also heard Almera's stoic voice, asking him to make his appearance. "What happened? And why are you guys so loud? Didn't we have a day off today?" Ken asked while holding his head in both of his hands, just to make him see better by massaging his forehead. But what he got in return was an even louder reply filled with unmasked anger. "You wretched sod, do you even have a little shame? Or are you just another serial womanizer who needs some ass whooping?" Thankfully, Ken had shaken his head a little to make him stop hearing things at slow speed before Devon's statement, which was laced with threats. It took him a while to process what was said to him. "I'm sorry, but do I know you? And why are you shouting so much? Aaron, Ace Almera, what is this about?" Ken saw his team members and asked them for some explanation. He figured it would be better if he talked to them instead of this elf bunch. Ken, what did you do to Miss Lensa? I mean, what happened when you went on a date with her?" Aaron asked with concern and care that one couldn't discredit as fake. The White Knight seemed even more confused by Aaron's queries. "I went on a date? I remember Lensa from our meeting at the market shop. But nothing took place after that. I have no idea what you guys are talking about." Ken hadn't had the faintest of what any of the groups were asking. But his honesty was taken as an uncaring attitude for his deeds by Devon and his friends. "This bastard, guys, beat him. I don't care any more about anything. His foul mouth and attitude need to be taught a lesson they won't forget." "Hold up. What? What are you doing? Leave me. Arg. Ace Almera, please help." Ken was soon grabbed by his collar by Devon after saying that. His hands were locked stretched by guys standing on either side. Devon was just about to initiate acquaintance between his mana-imbued fist and Ken's face when he heard a voice from behind. "Please hold up, Ace Devon. May I know the details of what happened from both sides before you start serving your vigilante justice on the boy?" Almera spoke at the right time. But in Aaron's point of view, it was the worst timing ever. He clicked his tongue after he saw Devon's fists getting stopped by the ear ranker's proposal. Devon sighed after hearing Almera's question. It was tough for him to describe the events that took place yesterday with his beloved niece. But he had to do it since another ear ranker had asked who was an assistant to the dear ranker he had met at the lobby. "All right. I'll tell you what this vile creature did with my niece Lensa. But I'll do what I came here to do soon afterwards no matter what you say. Here's what happened." Devon began narrating the events that he knew took place between Lensa and Ken. Chapter 141, Redo of a Sleeping Beauty. His beloved niece had found a date with a human kid. And the date took place yesterday on the night of the full moon. Devon didn't seem like he was bothered by his niece having started dating or the fact that she was going on a date with a human. But his face turned grim soon afterwards when he started to describe what took place after that. The night of the Lensa's defloration. Lensa had to admit. She had the best first-time experience she could ask for, thanks to Ken's dominant attitude. He had created a deep impression within her psyche. That was great, Ken. It may be my inexperience in this field that's talking here, but it was a view-changing thing for me. Now I'm glad I waited for you to come into my life before deciding to just go with it. But now you'll have to take responsibility for all you've done to me, hee hee. The not maiden anymore elf spoke what she truly felt from her heart. She had spoken the last sentence so she could get closer to her partner by putting the pressure of responsibility on his shoulder. She liked Ken and was hoping he would like her the same way. Unfortunately, Ken wasn't interested. He spoke after taking a long breath. Lensa, this may be an unforgettable experience for you because it was your first time. But for me, it's a regular thing, if you know what I mean. And you were nothing but a clueless amateur in our entire session who didn't have a sense in pleasing their partners. I'm disappointed that an elf can be this dense in sexual exploration. I had heard that some elves can sense their partner's feelings and act accordingly to please them more. But I guess you are not one of those elves? And I must confess one thing to you. All this that took place between us is just due to my heavy drinking of elf ale that skewed my tastes and influenced me to come here. The elf ales that come with their signature effects shouldn't be taken lightly. I've come to realize this. I drank the unscented wind empty mind ale that unme elves are famous for making. My drunk brain thought it was a good idea to meet you here at the time I was drinking that cursed drink. And all this happened here was just a consequence of that. Let's forget what happened here. I'm sure the ale's effects would make me forget about this night too. This clarity I have right now won't be retained tomorrow when I wake up. Because I'd be forgetting everything I do under the ale's effect. At least I hope I do. Because you are not my type. I hope you too forget about this event and never contact me again. I'll be taking my leave now. Farewell. Ken got up, got ready, and left the place the couple was at. Lensa, on the other hand, started looking aimlessly into the void after she heard her partner's opinion. The tears had breached the boundaries of her eyelids and were now flowing over. But she still wouldn't close her eyes. Lensa was crying with her eyes open. She felt lost and demeaned at the same time. This was the first time she was feeling such a strong concoction of negative emotions. What was her mistake? Blindly trusting a stranger and going what her heart wanted her to do? Or was her inexperience really to blame? Lensa would have never thought that she could be hurt this way. Her heartbroken status had paralyzed her and her mana core was affected subconsciously. The mana core influenced Lensa's mana circuits to freeze everything around her with an ice element spell of unknown origin. The girl just wanted to freeze everything for a while so that she wouldn't have to think of her current feelings of abandonment. Lensa's feelings were so strong that her mana core responded by casting a spell that respected her wishes. It formed a layer of mana-imbued ice around her that was radiating a faint white light. Soon the formation of ice took on the shape of an ice slab. It had practically sealed the young elf lady entirely without any scope for her to breathe. But that white radiance reflected by the ice slab had started to turn dim, glow bright, before turning dim again in a manner that represented a breathing cycle. The breathing light effect conveyed that Lensa was indeed alive inside that ice slab. But the young lady had stopped feeling anything. She was put in a vegetative state. And the most bizarre thing was, it was she who had done it. Lensa had also subconsciously wished that her naked body wouldn't be seen by anyone else while she was trying to get her thoughts together. The spell had responded to her wishes by making the ice slab non-transparent in some places. Now people could only see Lensa's face and some of her features. The rest was covered by the ice slab's non-transparent property in sensitive places. The magic cast by the young lady had stopped being magic and ended up serving her wishes to AT. Lensa's family had started looking for her the next day when she didn't come home. Devon soon found her traces and followed those to Moonview Lake. He was going to scold the young lass for always making a scene. But it seemed that he was frozen too by seeing Lensa's condition at the place. He didn't even know what he was looking at. All he saw was Lensa's stoic face frozen inside the ice slab that was producing the breathing light effect. He was going to smash the ice and take her niece out but was stopped by someone over the ID Stone's audio channel. Devon didn't argue with that person's suggestion that Lensa's ice slab shouldn't be broken but instead moved to her family's estate. He didn't know why that person had called him. But he had understood that something extreme had happened to his niece. That and the fact that the ice slab he had just seen was not normal. It was so abnormal that the person he wouldn't expect to get a call from had called him to preserve that ice slab. Devon arranged for a few people to transport the block of ice to his family's estate while he stayed at the same place, waiting for the historian he knew to show up. Devon wanted to know what had happened to his beloved niece who he and his family had always protected from any harm. He also wanted to make the responsible person pay the price for leaving Lensa in the state with no limits placed on the punishments. The historian soon showed up. She couldn't get anything on the spell that had been used to cast that block of ice. But she found out what had happened with Lensa at the place, thanks to her historian-specific spells. That's how they got to know about Ken Riverine and what he had done to Lensa. Chapter 142, Effects of Elven Ales. Devon's historian let him know about Ken and what he had done with Lensa, including what he had said in the end. Lensa's young uncle was incensed after knowing her niece's heart was broken cruelly by this wretched human. The fact that he was under the booze's effect didn't lessen Ken's involvement and responsibility in the situation. Devon would make sure to punish the guy who had forced his lovely niece to cut her connection from the rest of the world in such an extreme manner. Devon left out the part of Lensa caging herself in the block of ice using the magic of unknown origin and told everything else to Almera and Aaron. The fact that such a reclusive expert had called to preserve that ice from getting destroyed hinted to Devon that he should keep the spell-generated ice block a secret for now. The unscented wind empty mind ale was famous for giving people controlled amnesia when they were under the ale's effect. It was also renowned for changing their personalities into someone that only sought to fulfill their wishes if drunk in sufficient quantities. The ale would first make its users feel drunk and give them a good high. But if drunk in sufficient quantities, the effects of this booze won't stop there, as another phase of the effect would get unlocked. In the next phase, the users would then be kicked out from their drunken stupor all of a sudden. They would get to experience the absolute clarity of what they wanted to do the most in their lives. The absolute clarity also implied that they would be aware of their current state of being drunk on the ale at the time of facing their desires. In this state, the users would seek to fulfill their desires without any bias on the pre-established opinions. That's why it was considered as one of the most hilarious or dangerous elf liqueurs depending on who drank it. The city administration was split in half between retaining the ale on the shelves of the bar and banning it entirely. The drunkards of this booze had created many messes in the city after they were put in the state of empty mind after all. They had disrupted public order and caused public property damage. But the city generated a hefty revenue from the selling of this booze. Some of its regular customers would place orders in bulk no matter how many times the city administration raised the tax on it. So there were members of the city administration that didn't want to close this channel of hefty revenue by banning the drink. They forced the ones who wanted to do so to come to a compromise. A compromise in which they would instruct the tavern owners inside the city to control the quantity of the unscented wind empty mind per person. As per the instruction, the tavern owners would have to stop selling the booze to a customer who was getting dangerously close to experiencing the ale's empty mind phase. Otherwise, they would be questioned or even maybe held responsible if and when one of their patrons does something radical while under the ale's effect. But that didn't stop most booze owners from selling the stuff like what they had been doing previously. And they would always get away by paying the right person in city administration when one of their patrons was caught in a controversial case. What's more, the ale didn't have the usual odor of alcohol. It didn't make the user exude the smell of being drunk. The ale meant the unscented part in its name. It was as if the concoctioner of the ale wanted people to experience clarity of mind without them feeling like they are just drunk. The unscented wind was less like booze and more like a debuff potion with an additional effect or two. All the famous elf liqueurs were like this. That's why Marla was so crazy about them. The frost foam ale that she had demanded from Arizi Hanna was something the Agnoth family was famous for making. The frost foam would make the user feel the most intense chill and produce frost on their skin after drinking. Soon that frost would turn into a foam before disappearing into thin air. In a way, the names of elven ales were a dead giveaway for the effects they would produce. The ale's effect was the reason Aaron had chosen the unscented wind empty mind for Ken to get drunk on. He had already bribed the tavern owner. That too using Ken's money. And made the guy pay for both of them using additional charges. Why should Scrooge waste his wealth to get the guy drunk even when it was for his plans? The best part about this plan was that Ken wouldn't be able to deny the charges he was slapped with. The ale was known to make changes in the user's normal personality. They would be extremely focused on getting the things they want at any cost. And they would do everything in their power to achieve that goal. Plus, they would be aware that their clear and extremely logical state of mind was due to the ale's effect. This effect would just magnify the feelings and emotions users already had in their minds. It wouldn't alter their personality. That's why Aaron couldn't completely be rude to Lensa. Because the Ken people knew wasn't a rude or misbehaving person. That's why Aaron had selected his dialogues specifically so that they would give away that the guy was under the ale's effect. The Dark Knight had set the close to perfection trap for Ken to fall in. And now he was anticipating his efforts to become fruitful. Aaron made people assume that he stopped drinking before the ale's effects kicked in while Ken went overboard and kept on drinking. And since the ale's effect was potent, it changed his personality and turned him into a horndog that only wanted to fuck at any cost without worrying about his partner's feelings. Almera could only sigh in disappointment after hearing Devon's explanation. She knew that it wasn't completely Ken's fault. But she also felt that he should face consequences for his actions, even when they were done under the ale's effects. Almera retired to her room after the explanation ended, looking at Ken with pity. The guy was too stunned to process what he had done while staying aware of his surroundings. He was trying hard to jog his memory of last night. So he didn't notice Almera's departure. The ace ranker from Aaron's team had given her silent permission to Devon. He could do whatever he wanted with him now as long as it didn't involve something extreme. And so it finally happened. Aaron watched in glee as his arch-nemesis was getting pounded hard by the enemies he didn't make. His only regret at that moment was that he didn't have popcorn to watch this awesome show. Chapter 143, Pay-Per-View. Wait, let me explain. I really wasn't, arg. What are you doing? Grab his hands tight. I can't kick him properly otherwise. Arg. Bastard, I'm telling you. It wasn't. Me. Cough cough. It was your damn ale. You should have banned it arg. From getting served too. Just shut the fuck up and receive your reward like a man. You were so confident last night, right? Just thinking about it makes my blood boil. Guys, let's beat him up together. Help, Aaron. Help me, man. You know I'm innocent in all this. Just leave that boy out of your mess, you swine. And nobody would come to save you after what you've done with my niece. For the next few minutes that felt like a breeze to Aaron, he heard a cacophony of noises. But he wasn't paying attention to any of them. He was focused on watching this nuisance of a white knight getting his ass handed to him by the goons he had indirectly hired. Aaron wasn't aware of what had happened to Lensa after he had left her there. And Devon kept that detail out from his explanation as well. So he had assumed that the girl was just sad and broken-hearted. Aaron had assumed that the girl must have complained to her family about being treated as a cum dump by Ken. He had remembered that Lensa's family was influential from his previous timeline's memories. So he knew it would not hesitate to take action against the Earl's scion, especially when he had misbehaved on its turf. Aaron finally got to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He felt all his efforts were worth it to watch this show. The Scrooge was magnanimous enough to make an exception and pay with his own money this time to watch this pay-per-view in repeat. Alas, the show ended for Aaron when Ken managed to blurt out the following amid the beating he was receiving. Fine. Let me speak, damn it. I am ready to take the responsibility for my actions. Where's Lensa? HOH. Stop. Don't you dare to raise that fist on me again. Otherwise forget about me ever getting myself involved with the girl. Ken finally managed to make the guys stop beating him with his statements. They were enough for Devon to at least let him explain himself better before he started his next round of rewarding. What do you mean by taking responsibility? Brat, explain yourself better. Otherwise, the next course of your meal is going to be even more appetizing for you. I mean, let me meet Lensa. I mean, if I have really hurt her, let me say sorry to her. And make amends to her. I want to hear from her mouth what I did or didn't do from her mouth. I'll let you guys know how I can make amends after that. Ken expected his answer would get appreciated by Devon because it was based on logic and reasoning. But he would have never guessed that his answer would irk the young elf uncle more. That's because his niece had to be awake for her to talk with this wretched guy, which she was not. You just like to dig your own grave, don't you? Guys, beat him some more for me. Wow. Should I gift this Devon guy a bouquet or something? The guy's just unstoppable when it comes to beating teens. Aaron had this thought and smiled inside his head as he watched Ken getting pounded for another round. Aaron hoped the White Knight would get beaten up in front of him every time he opens his eyes in the morning. That would be a good start for the day. But alas, Ken decided to open his mouth again against Aaron's wishes. Wait, arg. Hold on. For Lensa's sake, damn it. Listen to me. Something tells me Lensa would listen to my story. I'm sure she would understand that I wasn't in control of my behavior or function. That's the problem, you dimwit. She can't talk to you. She can't talk to anyone. Devon answered frustratingly. He knew the boy was talking sense. His point about the ale needing to get banned from the street was also hit the bullseye. But like Aaron, Devon too had started experiencing uncontrollable irritation after looking at Ken's hero-like face. What do you mean? Don't tell me she did. Fuck you, Ken Riverine. No, my girl isn't that weak. It's just that. Devon denied Ken's grim predictions and sighed. He didn't know what to do with the boy anymore. One part of him wanted to beat this brat up till he died. And the other wanted to take him to his niece, hoping his presence and apology would bring her back from her icy slumber. Finally, the rational part took over and Devon decided to come clean to Ken regarding a few things about Lensa's situation. He first dispersed all his teammates that he had brought to the inn, including the ones waiting at the lobby. He wanted to relieve Aaron too, but Ken demanded that his friend and Almera should stay with him. Ken had understood that something had happened to Lensa after his supposed misadventure on her. He figured it was better to rely on his friends in this situation for his and Lensa's sake. Devon decided that the guy like Aaron who talked less and didn't butt into his business wouldn't spread the news about Lensa's condition any further. And Almera was even tight-lipped considering she didn't even stay there to watch her teammate getting pounded by him and his team. So Devon invited both Aaron and Almera into Ken's room before locking the door. He then told them about what had happened to Lensa after Ken's departure. Ken and Almero were shocked. But the guy who had caused this event was in even more of a shock than those two. He had dark lines on his forehead after thinking about a possibility. For hell's sake, please don't turn this misfortune into a fortuitous encounter for this goddamn mother protagonist. Chapter 144, Silver Lining. This fucking Ken Riverine. I should just kill him instead of petty plotting like this. Arg. Fuck. Aaron was raging inside his room after Devon left. He was mad and pissed with the recent turn of events. But he wasn't really angry at Ken. He was angry at himself for inadvertently helping his enemy. Because he could see the trap that he had set for Ken was going to end up benefiting him in the end. Aaron did enjoy the rare sight of Ken getting beat up. But at what cost? Ernie, why are you breaking stuff inside the room? You never do that. I told you. You should have let me eat Ken. I still don't understand what he did to us this time though. Aaron quieted down after he heard words of wisdom coming from his seemingly childish demon beast. She was sitting on his bed with a bowl of chips in her hand. She was munching on junk food as she watched her master make a mess out of his in-room. Aaron understood that he had lost his mind for real if Reen had to step in to talk sense into him. Aaron took a long breath and looked around him. He had broken a few things inside his in-room. His heart pained when he thought about the cost of this damage he had to pay with his money. Losing his cool was not like him. He needed to think about things that he can do to find good in the bad. The protagonist's luck would do this for him. But the butcher needed to find his own good luck with his actions. After Devon's explanation, Aaron had realized that Ken's supposed impression on Lensa's psyche was deeper than he had anticipated. The trauma had caused her to go into a vegetative state inside a block of ice, which belongs to the magic of unknown origin. If Aaron's grim predictions were right on spot, Ken's presence was going to be the key in breaking that block of ice without harming Lensa. And knowing the guy, he would never leave a damsel in distress behind. Especially if he thought he was the cause behind it. Aaron had already committed to Devon that he was thinking of being in an official relationship with Lensa. With his attitude and the elf girl's delicately impressionable mind added in the equation, the butcher had already predicted that things would turn out to be a fortuitous affair for his enemy. Aaron didn't remember much from his previous timeline regarding Lensa's family, but he knew that it was influential. At least influential enough to not fear the consequences of messing with the Earl's scion if he decides to harm one of theirs. Ken would have another strong support to lean onto if the relationship becomes official. Aaron was already worried that the guy's background was too dangerous to go against openly. With Lensa's family standing behind him as well, it might as well that he forgets about harming the strands of hair on his head. Aaron didn't find any glory in the possibility of Ken getting pre-cooked if he entered into a serious relationship with Lensa. He hadn't planned that thing in the first place. And it was not directly benefiting him either. Ernie, am I allowed to eat Ken now? Reen asked while eating her chips. Aaron stopped pacing around in his room and looked at his demon beast. He shook his head and massaged his forehead before saying, "This is still not the right time, Reen. The reason I messed with Ken was not only because I have a personal grudge against him. It was the major reason, yes. But it wasn't the only one. The thing is, this guy will just keep on climbing the ladders of social status and personal powers if left unhindered. And he'll have his biggest fortuitous encounter in some years due to those two things working for him. I wanted to create a blemish on his image with this scene. I also had some other plans in mind so that he doesn't become a threat in the future for me when I also enter the fray to claim that encounter for myself. But now I see that fate is a fickle mistress. She wants to create a hero out of Ken. So me getting in progress will be squatted down like a fly by him directly or indirectly, and he'll be awarded for lifting his hand. An insect as I might be compared to those ranking monsters, I don't wish to be treated like one. Therefore, I'll give up on messing with the protagonist for now. I don't want to passively buff the airhead any further than he already is. My life and my plans are more important than my grudges. And things in the present are more important to me than what might happen in the future. I just hope this doesn't come back to bite me back in the ass. Sigh. Aaron sat down on his bed after concluding that his previous plan of leaving Ken to his devices is the right choice even for now. He took some chips from the bowl Reen was holding and crunched on them while he tried to plan something good in the blunder he had created all by himself. Oh. Do you want to find out how you can make use of this situation? Let me think as well. Reen copied Aaron's gesture and massaged her forehead like him while trying to come up with an answer to her master's worries. Aaron could only smile at her for thinking about his well-being. He thought maybe all his bad habits were getting picked up by the impressionable demon beast. Maybe she'll be seen as even eviler than Aaron himself in the future. Because she doesn't acknowledge the hold of human values. She has only copied what Aaron teaches her because her master wants her to blend in with his current society. Aaron was having wild thoughts like this when he was interrupted by Reen's next words. Ernie, what do you mean when you say this Ken guy and Lensa getting in a serious relationship? Chapter 145, Political marriages. Aaron didn't have much hope from Reen with her naive mind. And he didn't see how knowing about that thing would help her find a solution for his current mess either. But he entertained her questions anyway. Well, it can mean a lot of things, from not so casual flings to tying the knot for good. But for families like Riverine and Corinne, casual flings don't exist. Their marriages and relationships are always political and are formed based on mutual benefits. I would guess that Ken would seriously consider marrying Lensa. That means he'll forever be tied to another influential family that is located here in the city, which is a strategic place for the Kingdom of Edinburgh. I was just now considering playing spoil sport. You know, create a hindrance between Ken and Lensa. That is in case Ken manages to bring his lady to be back from her slumber. But now that I think about it. No, Ernie. You didn't understand. I am asking if Ken being with Lensa would make him unable to be approached by other possible mates. Sure. The thing about the political marriage of two powerhouses is that they are almost always based on monogamous relationships. At least for the public eye. So yes. Ken will have to give up on his bachelorhood if and when he is engaged officially with Lensa. Aaron told Reen and had another bite of the fast food. The latter perked up after hearing what her master said. Is that so? Then wouldn't it be better if we push Ken into getting engaged with Lensa? Hee. I mean, things would get really difficult for a certain someone you know if Ken can't be approached for another political marriage. Reen smirked at Aaron after saying that. She let her master decode what she had already said on his own while she focused on having more chips in one go. Aaron was making it difficult for her to enjoy the potato chips sprinkled with roasted lamb meat the inn had delivered to their room. Sienna Slughorn. It didn't take long for Aaron to figure out what Reen was trying to hint at. He was surprised by Reen's growing intelligence. And even more surprised that he couldn't come up with the same thing on his own. Maybe the rage he had felt from his past timeline's experiences had blinded him to see things. That's right, Ernie. Sienna Slughorn. If Ken becomes engaged, her prospects of tying their two houses go in the drain. At least that's what I've understood so far about how human societies work based on your memories. Said Reen nonchalantly. Ernie nodded at her while replying. You are right. In a way, it is good for us that this protagonist will be linked with the Karens here rather than getting linked with the Slughorns. Haha. I want to see the bitch's face when she comes to know that her pawn was put in the different chessboard altogether. Aaron and Reen chatted for a while before deciding on a few things about how they should proceed further. The butcher had stopped underestimating his demon beast. Her cunning was in its most primal stages, but it was one that he could count on for a change of perspective. Brad, what is this kid doing over here? And Ace Almera, you want to come too? Devon had asked Ken to meet up outside the inn the next day. So that he could be taken to where Lensa was at. But the former found that the latter was joined by Aaron and Almera. Luckily, Devon had come to the place with a four-seater carriage. Yes. Ken is still a team member we have. Adapt Marla would want me to ensure his safety when he is going with you. No offense to your intentions though. Devon nodded at Almera after hearing her response. To be honest, he was relieved. At least in their presence, he won't murder the Riverine kid before he reached the Curran Manor. The group of four boarded the carriage that was in front of them and made their way to the Curran Manor. The Curran Manor was a big, castle-like architecture that was home to all the members of the Curran clan present in the city. Devon took his guests to one of the most restricted sections of the manor. A spacious hall with no furniture presented itself in front of Aaron. There was a large array diagram drawn in the middle of this hall that was exuding a mild white light. A giant block of ice was seen right in the center of that array. The block of ice was also exuding a particular light. But unlike the unchanging mild light of the array, this one was exuding a breathing light effect. What should I do now? Ken asked Devon without getting overwhelmed by anything in front of him. The latter replied to him while shrugging his shoulders. We don't know, Brad. You think one of our kids getting frozen is a regular event for us? Ken ignored the sarcasm-laced remark from Devon and fixated his eyes on the block of ice. He could see Lensa's face clearly and it looked like that was an uncomfortable sight for him to look at. Let the boy go near Lensa. The rest of you, stay where you are. An aged voice spread across the large hall. Aaron looked back and saw a middle-aged elf man walking in from outside. When Aaron looked at him, he felt like he had the most serious headache since the time he was sent back in time. He had sweat formed on his forehead and his eyes felt like they were being stabbed by needles. Plus, his body's survival instincts were sending warning signals to him to get the hell away from this man. Damn it! A high ranker. Reen, don't you dare do anything while this rude ass is here. Chapter Author Review after 150 plus S. Author Review after 150 plus chapters. I've included this review here because it couldn't fit the review section's word count limit. I'll try to go as in-depth as I can get without giving away spoilers. So please go through the entire review first before deciding to place your questions. And kindly refrain from asking about the spoilers. A lot of things happened to the novel since I wrote the first review for VET. First, it received a bronze price in WPC 218. Then it got contracted. It's about time I let the new readers know what they can expect from this title. Writing quality, I believe I have a sound sentence construction. And I'm fairly confident in my linguistic skills. Yes, there might be some stray errors that I couldn't catch till now, most of them being just some ATD errors. But they won't hamper your readability. Writers develop a blind spot for their work. That's they can't serve as the best proofreaders for their novels. Therefore, I request the readers to take up that role and point any error they do find so that we can fix them together. A simple comment from you can help us give this novel a professional edge it may be lacking. Story Dev, the novel gives a unique take on an extremely saturated market, MC going back in time. Still, I've made sure to not take the beaten path and make this novel only a revenge or harem-centric story. It has those moments, sure. But collectively, it is much more than any of its aspects combined. The storyline is optimally paced. It is neither too fast nor too slow. One might argue that the storyline could be made a little faster, and normally I'd agree with them. But the extended explanations I've included have saved the novel from forming plot holes many times now. As a reader myself, I know how off-putting it can be to find a mood-killer plot hole that throws entire story into a disarray. Therefore, I've made sure to fortify the novel verse with right descriptions depicting relevant world settings, things, people, and more provided at the right time. Character design. Aaron Idril is a pathological liar and cunning manipulator. He prefers to catch his opponents off guard so that he can deal with them with maximum efficiency while ensuring his own interests are not hurt in the process. Certain mishaps have happened to him in his past timeline. And that has changed him to be the kind of person he is even in the current timeline. Therefore, he'd always prioritize his benefits over blind-sided revenge. And he'd make his moves in the shadows for the most part to get the things or result he wants. If you are here for an overpowered MC who goes through his obstacles like an unstoppable hurricane, you will be disappointed reading this piece. But if you want to watch a cynic, bitter-minded, two-faced, and compulsive liar of an MC take on his challenges with absolute prudence and OC-dish preparedness, then this book here is your cup of tea. Updating stability. Since the novel has gone premium, readers would be assured of stabilized updates. And I'm counting on you guys to influence me into doing mass releases every so often with your gifts, golden tickets, and any other form of support you can provide. World background. The novel world really starts to unfold after the end of Volume 1. And expands extensively after Chapter 100. That takes time to show its readers how diverse it can get. The cons. 1. The start of the novel has its infodump moments. I've tried to keep things in control, but for a fresh novel to build up its lore, infodumps are unavoidable. 2. The conversational dialogues can be a bit stretched at first. But that's because I've tried to incorporate a lot of world-building information in them. 3. It's not a #M story even though Aaron is polygamous. That means he'd get intimate with a lot of women without marrying them. 4. The plotline is not $mut-centric. The R18 scenes and other comic relief moments are only used sporadically to give a breather to readers from reading too much serious stuff all at once. 5. The RPG elements of the story kick after Volume 1 finishes. 6. No op MC. No instant power UPS. No level-defying abilities for MC to beat characters superior in ranking status than him. 6. There might be a few ATD errors that I'm not aware of or yet to rectify. 7. A few longest author notes. I've included them to open a dialogue with my readers while keeping them in loop about some extra information that is relative to the current plotline. And now the pros. 1. No BS. Our boy doesn't involve himself too much in the life of women he is in bed with. Neither will he fight their battles for them. No offending of young masters just because Aaron is dating someone good looking. 2. Almost non-existent young master troops. 3. I've tried to balance the grim stuff with situational comic relief moments. I feel that has kept the storyline from becoming bland. 4. The power levels are based on the fusion of RPG elements and cherry-picked cultivation concepts. I've done that to avoid unexplainable system powers-ups. And the inclusions of few well-known nuances of mana act as a solid reason behind any power-up. You can read Chapter 2 from Auxiliary Volume to know what I'm talking about. 5. No op protagonist. Aaron has to follow the same rules other characters in the novel verse are bound by. His only advantages are his knowledge about the past events he is aware of, his matured way of looking at things, and his beast companion. And he makes use of all them sparsely while keeping his safety in check. 6. No plot armors for MC for the most part. Aaron has to deal with the consequences of his actions directly or indirectly. 7. Minimal attribute spec sheet dumps. No need to keep on thinking about MCs and others' ranking statuses. The BTP, base stat points, would eventually become the only value you need to get a fair idea about characters' power levels. 8. Well-crafted power structure and paths to magic incorporated with character class. Something I've invested time and efforts in. I believe we have something good in store here for all of you. At least wait till chapter 100 before you decide to quit on vet. Because by then, I'm sure it'll have you hooked. Join my Discord or send an invite on Insta to stay updated or clear your queries. Details in the synopsis. That's it. Happy reading. Chapter 146, Way of the Elements. Aaron warned his demon beast after witnessing that middle-aged man enter the hall. He immediately figured out the guy was a high-ranked who was at least in the B rank or higher. The guy didn't try to hide his ranking status either. He let his aura herald his grand entrance. Usually, the high rankers like him would contain their mana sense, mana signature, and aura within themselves in presence of the low rankers. Otherwise, the low rankers would face the same repercussions Aaron had faced just now when they came in contact with such existences. This was one of the rankers' codes after all. But this didn't care about the code. Not today. He wanted to make a statement. Ken also felt the same side effects after he sensed the man's presence. Almera was in better condition than these two. But she too looked pale. But none of them voiced their displeasure. The man was already rude and uncaring towards them. What good would it do to provoke him further? I'm sorry, younglings. I usually don't meet with people, so I forgot to contain my aura. At ease. The man retracted his mana sense and aura, which allowed the low rankers present in the hall to breathe a sigh of relief. He didn't pay attention to any particular low ranker though. He was focused on the block of ice in front of him. Go ahead, Scion of Riverine. I want to see how Lensa's subconscious reacts to your presence when you go near her. The man said this while looking at Lensa's face. His statements felt more like an order than a suggestion. Either way, Ken had to oblige. He knew recluse rankers were erratic. They would get offended over the slightest inconvenience. Ken nodded his head to nobody in particular and walked ahead. He reached the block of ice and touched it with the palm of his hand. An extreme shiver ran through his body after the white knight touched the surface of the block of ice. He also fell under a short illusion of standing in the middle of a valley surrounded by ice mountains. And the weird thing was that the ice was exuding a faint white light with tinges of rainbow shades making their sporadic appearances. Ken immediately retracted his hand and the illusion stopped. He had understood one thing. What he had experienced just now wasn't just an effect due to his skin getting in contact with the ice, but due to something else entirely, as the chill was felt by his soul, not just his body. Way of the Ice. Ken's eyes opened wide in surprise when he realized what this block of ice contained within it. The Way of Elements was a mana concept that was not known to many low rankers. The Way of Elements was used by high-ranked entities to cast their spells with. It would boost their spells to an unfathomable degree while allowing them to breach the ranking restrictions placed on the spell efficacies. In short, the Way of Elements was only employed by the high-ranked entities to make their spells almost come to life. And low rankers didn't stand at the pedestal to utilize it. Furthermore, the utilization of the concept was a long shot when most low rankers didn't even know of its existence. Even a guy like Ken, who had been given knowledge about a lot of ranking-related things, only barely knew a thing or two about the Way of the Elements. That is because most of the information about the concept was only made privy to the high rankers. And yet, an F ranker like Lensa had used the spell while incorporating the Way of Ice. How was this possible? Don't be so shocked, boy. Don't use your human standards to judge the caliber of an elf. Yes, it is what you think it is. Way of the Ice. The middle-aged man cleared Ken's doubts. Also, Aaron's as well, because he was paying close attention to Ken's shocked face too. Do you mean it is common for an elf to unlock the Way of the Element this early? Ken asked while lowering his head. But one could sense the tinge of unbelief laced in his voice. The high-ranked entity didn't mind and continued. No, I must admit that it is still surprising for an F-rank elf to unlock the Way of Elements. And it would amaze you even further when you think about the lineage that is dominant within her. Please explain further, sir. Ken wasn't aware of what the high ranker was talking about. And ideally, he shouldn't be so casual in talking to this rude man. But he asked anyway as he wanted to know more about Lensa. Thanks to his protagonist Luck, the guy explained it to him. Lensa is a Suryact, or what you humans call a sun elf. The only trace of snow elf lineage within her comes from her great-grandmother. And yet, she is now an ice element user. To be honest, Lensa has dual hybrid element affinities. Light and ice. But her ice affinity was never this prominent. But now Lensa's ice affinity has shot up. Or it was slumbering within her and was only waiting for the right moment. Now she can give the prodigies of the snow elves a run for their money if and when she wakes up. Sigh. No matter how high ranked we get, we can never really predict how a ranker's path can deviate from the initial estimates. Gramps Dan, forgive my rudeness, but can we stop explaining things to this brat and focus on waking Lensa up now? It's already been so many hours since she is in that state now. Devon butted in right after Dan finished what he had to say. The guy was in a hurry to wake Lensa up. He was worried about his niece's safety after all. Dan finally moved his eyes away from the block of ice and looked at his impatient family member, because of which the latter started regretting speaking at all. But contrary to his imagination, Dan didn't exert any ranking pressure on him and just casually blurted out, "We don't need this riverine boy to wake Lensa up." Chapter 147, Dynamic Dan. Devon was so pissed after hearing this old monster's reply that he felt like pulling the guy's silky smooth hair and making him go bald. But he held his anger in. The guy was a recluse for real, as he claimed to be. And he didn't care much about his family members either. Up until Lensa's incident, that is. Then please wake her up. I don't. How stupid can you get, Devon brat? Why should we wake her up when she is benefiting from this self-isolation? I should focus on breaking through ranks just so that I can beat this asshole up one day. Devon had a red face as he clenched his teeth before finally managing to say the next words in suppressed anger. Then why did you tell me to bring the kid here? And what do you mean by Lensa is benefiting from getting stuck in the block of ice? I don't want her to starve to death just because there's a chance she can benefit from this. Ha 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 ha. You manage to crack me up from time and again, Devon boy. You seem calm, but there's the lava of anger bubbling inside you. I don't know how you can keep your head straight despite having such a short temper. Devon bit his lips again and talked back. Gramps Dan, you still didn't answer any of my questions. Dan's hearty chuckle turned into a mild smile before he replied to his descendant. All right. The reason I said she is benefiting from this situation is that she is now in a very peculiar situation. It is like the state of epiphany. But instead of the higher mana consciousness talking to you about a range of ranking subjects, it is limited to discussing the elements the ranker is affiliated to in an in-depth manner. The state of epiphany will benefit you in your ranking journey overall. But this peculiar state will help you gain new insights in the way of elements. Dan looked at Devon with meaningful expressions, as if expecting him to come to the gist of things on his own. You mean? It seemed that Devon was still struggling with the information provided to him by Dan, so the latter stopped beating around the bush and stated things clearly. In short, Lensa is safe and sound in this state and is gaining new insights in the way of elements related to her. And don't worry about her sustenance boy, mana is an all-encompassing matter that is both tangible and intangible. If the ranker is capable enough, they won't require anything else other than mana to survive and thrive in this world. Agreed, Lensa is still not on that level yet. But the responsibility of her sustenance is being taken care of by the mana itself. Or what you call the higher consciousness. So don't worry about her well-being. At least not yet. Then why the foo? I meant, why did we fetch an audience here? Shouldn't we let Lensa be as she is and keep the boy away from her? Devon looked hatefully at Ken and stated what he had on his mind. Boy, have you truly initiated a conversation with mana? I don't think you have. It is very addicting. You lose your sense of existence when you have a one-on-one with a higher consciousness. It cannot be described in words. Why do you think high-ranked entities become a recluse and are so unsatisfied talking to mortals and normies? It's because normal conversations cease to become interesting to them. After all, we stop defining the conversation that only uses words as a conversation over time. Have you seen people who can cast fire spells use normal means to light their bonfires? It's something like that. Devon's anger was reaching new heights as he listened to the old fart rambling about his achievements. He didn't understand what this so-called addiction had to do with his niece's current condition. But this time he didn't interrupt Dan and let him finish what he had to say. No need to become so angry with me, Devon boy. I just said all that to make you understand that Lensa needs an anchor. Someone who can keep her grounded in this world as we know it. Otherwise, she'll become like me. Or something much worse, I fear, considering her talents. Devon's short fuse immediately lit up brightly after understanding what Dan had to say. He looked at Ken while talking to Dan. So this boy is. That's right. Ken should act as the anchor for Lensa. And it is always a good choice to have an anchor when you are immersed in these peculiar states. You see, most of the things that the higher consciousness talks to you about are something that may or may not apply to you. But most of us don't have a hold over what the mana wants to talk to you about. So the anchor acts as a disconnect button to an overall intriguing conversation. It enables you to control the flow of the conversation indirectly. This control also allows you to initiate the conversation of your own will when you have enough expertise. Devon took a long sigh after hearing the old monster's explanation. He didn't know what to do anymore to take care of her niece in the best way he knew. So he looked at Ken and gave him the thread to feel better about himself. Riverine brat, you better hope you can become this anchor or whatever to my Lensa, otherwise, I'll anchor your ass here for good. Ken felt that he was wronged. He raised his hand and pointed his finger at Devon. He was going to answer the threats thrown at him for no rhyme or reason. But the White Knight was interrupted Dan before he could do so. Enough chit-chat for now. Ken, let's do this the way you did before. But this time spread your mana sense around the ice block and imbue your mana on your hand while you touch the ice. I want to see how Lensa reacts when she feels your presence. Dan narrowed his eyes on Ken after he said that. He hadn't released his high-ranking aura. Neither his words contained any threat. But Ken could feel that this was the most life-threatening situation he had found himself in. Chapter 148, Sleeping Beauty Awakens. I want to see how Lensa reacts when she feels your presence. But then again, the White Knight didn't have much wiggle room either. So he stopped thinking and nodded to Dan before proceeding to act on the latter's instructions. Ernie, I don't think Ken will succeed in waking Lensa up. Reen spoke as Ken started walking back to the block of ice again. Aaron controlled the sheer surprise of his demon beast defying his orders for the first time and spoke back to her in his mind. I think I had told you to stay silent, little lass. I'm sure there's a good reason for you to risk defying my order like this. Aaron raised his eyebrows after he said that. One could believe that he had done that in anticipation of events unfolding in front of him. But he was put on edge because of a different matter altogether. There is, Ernie. Don't you want Lensa and Ken's engagement to take place in the future? This idiot needs to successfully wake her up first with his presence for that to happen. But he won't be able to wake her up. And because of that, he'll be hated by the entire Curran clan. How will he get engaged to their girl even after she wakes up by other means after that? Reen said this before sounding a humph in Aaron's head. The butcher was looking at Dan to gauge his reactions after he talked to Reen. He only continued speaking to his demon beast after ensuring the high-ranking entity's lack of reaction. You mean this guy isn't what Lensa is looking for? And how do you know this in the first place? Aaron again had black lines on his forehead after he heard Reen talk. He had seen a chance to finally start getting back at Sienna with his seemingly botched-up operation. But even that possibility was turning out to be dim if Reen's observations were on point. Her subconsciousness that is seeped into her mana sense is constantly looking for a particular mana signature. It is like screaming one's name out loud when you can't find them in a crowd. That mana signature is your Ernie. I know this because I can sense these things, of course. Aaron heard another humph going off in his mind. But he was too lost in his current predicament to care about any of that. So you mean she is looking for me? Or my presence? But how could that be? Doesn't my mana signature get colluded when I shapeshift? You had certainly told me so. Aaron wasn't a fool who'd half-heartedly start making a mess everywhere just because he had gained the unique ability of shapeshifting. He knew that there were spells and methods of several kinds that could help someone establish the identities from real to fake. But Aaron had been assured by Reen that his mana sense gets colluded when he shapeshifts. It somewhat became the fusion of his signature and the signature of the person he had shapeshifted into. That's why Aaron had dared to shapeshift into Ken in the first place. He had weighed the risks and made sure that he didn't leave a clue behind his misadventure. And yet, the protagonist's luck had managed to retaliate against him. I'm not sure about that either. Maybe she asked the higher consciousness to clarify the colluded mana signature. And it rectified the collusion and let her know about the real thing? As I said, I'm not sure. Anyway. The girl is looking for you and she won't wake up by herself until she senses your presence. I'll follow my master's orders now and won't say another word. Humph. Why are you throwing tantrums now? Anyway, thanks. And yeah, keep silent. We shouldn't be pushing our luck here. Aaron now had to figure out a way to wake Lensa up while making sure that it was Ken who did it. All this conversation only took a few moments in reality as it was rapid transferring of thoughts. So Ken had just touched the block of ice while imbuing his hand in unelementalized mana. And as Reen said, no visible change took place. Can I tell something to my friend here that could help him wake Lensa? Aaron suddenly spoke up after seeing that things would start deteriorating if he let them be as they were. He didn't leave his place while doing that. Neither did he raise his head, lest the old monster find some vague reasoning to hurt him because he didn't follow his orders. Oh? And what that might be? Dan asked while looking at the new participant in their conversation. Well, the things that might have happened between Ken and Lensa are personal. So I want to talk to Ken privately regarding a few things. It might help him wake our young miss. Dan thought for a while and retracted his mana sense from the block of ice. Others did the same. It was a silent agreement to let Aaron have a word in private with Ken. Aaron walked up to where Ken was standing. The latter was looking at him with questions written all over his face. He still had his mana-imbued palm placed over the block of ice. Aaron came close to Ken's ears and talked random bullshit about women's hearts and their feelings. Then he patted the palm that was over the block of ice in a gesture to encourage him. Aaron told his friend to release his mana sense while thinking about all the feelings of a maiden's heart. It seemed that Ken did his best in following his teammates' orders. And the butcher barely grazed the block of ice accidentally just when Aaron was about to remove his hand from the back of Ken's palm. He also sent a tiny burst of his mana sense at the time of that touch. So tiny in fact that one would mistake it to be an involuntary action by a low ranker. The butcher had excellent control over his mana sense deployment for his rank and age to pull this off. And that finally did the trick. The block of ice glowed brightly before melting at a rapid pace. And the shining water was just evaporating into thin air instead of making a large pool around. Lensa, the sleeping beauty, was finally out of her self-confinement. Chapter 149, Settling Conflicts. The ice still covered her most sensitive parts, but the rest of her body was now out in the open. And she was also showing signs of waking up. Devon immediately called in the maids at the standby and told them to take care of his niece. The maids created a makeshift partition made of curtains around Lensa before getting her to wear clothes. When they were done, Lensa had already woken up completely and was wearing a nice-looking dress. Lensa seemed perplexed by her current situation. Then she remembered what had happened between her and Ken. Her eyes became moist when she saw the reason for her heartache standing right in front of her. "Ken brat, your work is done here. We'll summon you when you are needed. Now get the fuck out." Devon immediately rushed to his niece and embraced her before saying that. He didn't even pay a glance at Lensa's reaction. The elf girl was looking between Ken and Aaron, who was standing not very far from the White Knight. She felt that she was missing the only piece of a puzzle to complete it, but her abrupt awakening had forced the piece to grow legs and go into hiding. Aaron breathed a sigh of relief internally after looking at Lensa's reaction. Her bewilderment meant that his cover was not blown yet. "Ace Devon, I think you are forgetting what we had discussed. I told you I'd be happy to help Lensa as long as I get to talk to her. Now that she has woken up, I want to remind you of my part of the deal." Ken replied to Devon's "fuck you" attitude with a stoic face. He wasn't afraid of the guy anymore because it seemed that half of his guild had vanished into thin air after the elf's girl awakening. "Brat, I told you." "Wait, Uncle Dev. I want to talk to Ken as well. But before that, let me get freshen up first. There are so many confusing things filled to the brim in my mind right now." Lensa replied before Devon could throw Ken out of the current manner. The uncle took a long sigh before agreeing to his niece's demands. He could never say no to her. Now that Lensa has woken up, half of our troubles are put to rest. I'm sure that is the case for you as well. We'll let the two houses come to a mutual understanding now while ensuring their science safety. Aaron and I will take our leaves now. Almera spoke for the first time after coming to the hall. She was relieved that a major disaster had been averted. And she was sure that the two houses would fix a political marriage to fix this mess up nice and easy without creating a fuss that would be detrimental to both of their images. But her request to take leave was politely rejected by the sleeping beauty herself. "Ah, I can guess what must have happened. Ace Almera, please stay here for a while so that I can talk to all of you." Lensa sneakily looked at Aaron while she said that. For some reason, her mind wanted her to eye the seemingly unknown boy instead of looking at the real cause of her troubles. And she couldn't understand why. That's why she wanted to talk to Aaron to understand more about him. But she had already realized how things must have turned out because of her peculiar state. She would have to tie the knot to Ken in the future if things proceed as per their fixed course. That's why she couldn't approach a strange man out in the open anymore. At least not so unabashedly. The elf girl was very worried about her family's image after all. "Al, all right. We'll wait for you to get ready. But please know that we are on a mission here in the city. And Adept Marla might summon us anytime. So we'll have to answer her call if and when that happens." Almera relented while stating her condition. Lensa and Devon agreed to the same and arranged a living place for them to wait. Dan was silent while all this took place. He was seemingly looking at the void as if trying to think about the most mysterious thing in the world. Then he looked at Aaron and narrowed his eyes before shaking his head in denial. The guy disappeared from his place soon after. Nobody knew where he went. Ken and Lensa talked for a long while after she had gotten fresh. Almera and Aaron gave them the privacy they needed and waited outside the room. The White Knight explained his side of the story and Lensa had to admit he didn't have any ill intentions. She then explained her side of the story, which the former listened to keenly. It seemed that Ken was the most ideal guy she could ask for. And she had already slept with him to know that he was really good in bed too. All things considered, that was one of the most important criteria for any woman to select her life partner on. But there was something in her mind that was bothering her. She didn't voice her opinions in fear that her future husband might get offended by it. But she wanted to talk to Aaron for now. So she summoned the two waiting outside when she had a detailed conversation with Ken. The guy also seemed happy that his lady-to-be was this cooperative. He had already told her that it was a yes from his side. The ball was in her court now, which the lady tackled by delaying her decision to say anything tactfully. "Hi, there. Lensa. Hope you are feeling all better now. And I also hope that you and Ken become a thing so that the incident doesn't devolve into a family feud." Almera laid bare what she had on her mind. The elf girl seemed open-minded and pragmatic enough for her to do that. Lensa talked with Almera for a short while. They both smiled after knowing each other's likes and dislikes. The ranking status between the two was kept aside and the two women had a brief girl talk. Lensa then made a strange demand. I wish to talk to Aaron privately. I want to know more about Ken, you see. And who better than his teammate to tell me about a few things regarding him that even he doesn't know or can't tell me about? Hee. Will that be okay? Chapter 150, In Cahoots with the Cultists. Will that be okay? Lensa looked at the trio after stating her logical demand. Ken and Almera had smiles on their faces while agreeing to her request. Aaron smiled too. But his smile had a tinge of anxiety hidden in it. You enjoyed fucking a virgin elf, didn't you? Now prepare for the consequences, damn it. Aaron cursed while sitting beside Lensa on the luxuriously plush sofa. Almera and Ken had already left the room. So, what's up, novice Lensa Karin? Aaron started first. The more quickly he is done talking to Lensa, the better it would be for him to get away from the mess. The latter scanned him from top to bottom with her eyes before replying. Lensa is fine, Aaron. I'm sure you wouldn't mind me calling you just with your name either. I do mind in fact. Said internally before saying completely different outwardly. Yeah. It's fine. What do you want to ask about Ken? I'll tell you all that I know honestly. Hee. Aaron subtly moved the conversation towards Ken. He was expecting his move to achieve some form of success. But alas, the elf girl asked something else entirely. Aaron, have we met before? Like, have you come to the city of Silvermoon in your childhood? No. This would be my first time talking to you. And the same goes for my arrival in the city of Silvermoon as well. Why do you ask that? Aaron was a great actor and a pathological liar. But even he was finding it difficult to face the girl's inspective eyes with ease. It's nothing. I just thought that maybe we have met each other before. Maybe my thoughts are in complete disarray after experiencing that state. Please don't mind my weird questions too much. About Ken, let's see. Just tell me all that you know so far along with your interactions. Lensa finally let go of analyzing Aaron. Probably because she didn't find any chink in his armor. She finally moved to talk about Ken, in response to which the latter obliged and told her all that he knew and experienced working with him. Of course, Aaron made sure that Ken is represented in the best light possible. Thankfully, he didn't have to lie much as the boy was the perfect relationship material. Aaron took his leave soon afterwards. Lensa couldn't help but watch his departing figure with keen interest. She still felt that there was something more than meets the eye when it came to the butcher. But she just couldn't put a finger on it. In the end, she let the matter go. For now at least. She'll have to dig deep in the future when the opportunity comes. Or she'll have to create an opportunity for herself. Where did you guys disappear to? Marla asked with her hands folded in an inspective posture. Aaron's team was back at the inn, in Marla's room where she had summoned them to discuss the next part of the mission. Almera came forward and informed Marla about the recent developments that took place regarding Ken. Marla didn't know whether to laugh or play it cool after hearing what had happened with the boy. But she couldn't help but choose the former at the end. Ha 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 ha. You guys underestimated elven ales. Thank God, nothing major happened apart from this debacle. Otherwise, I would have had to bring your dead bodies home. An unscented wind empty mind is the worst ale one can start elven booze with. You should have gone for frost foam. It's the best and the safest option for newcomers. Marla wanted to talk more about the booze, but then she heard Almera clearing her throat. The adept was reminded by her assistant that she was going off topic. All right. Time to tell you about the second part of the mission. We'll move back to LA as soon as we finish this. From tonight onwards, we'll each be given an area outside the city walls to keep an eye on. We are looking for cultists and their links to someone in the city of Silvermoon. Most of the city administration doesn't know this part about the mission, and we are going to keep it that way. We'll each leave separately just before the late evening and come here to the inn in the morning. Don't worry about your safety. These days, I've been busy and made some preparations. I had to recon the areas to make sure that those can be areas of interest. I used some of our captives' intel for that. After confirming the areas, I planted a few articles outside the city zone at the areas we are going to monitor. I'll give you a recipient artifact each. If there's an outsider adept or ace ranker within a certain range, the artifacts will produce a visual signal and let you know where they are located. You'll have plenty of time to retreat if someone you can't handle shows up. Almera, you will follow any suspicious E ranker when you find them using the device. And Ken and Aaron will follow F rankers. We'll try to keep our cover intact and follow them. And try to capture them if the cover gets blown. Killing them is the last resort. We'll do the recon for the next 3 days. We'll retreat to LA, whether we'll capture a new lead or not. Is there any part of the mission you don't understand? Marla asked her teammates and got no response in return, telling her that they all had understood their assignment. She nodded her head before started giving a few more in-depth details that she hadn't shared yet. Aaron kept on listening to Marla's instructions. But a part of him was thinking about the reason that led to the secrecy they had to maintain during the second part of the mission. And he narrowed his eyes after zeroing in on the most probable one among them. Someone big in the city of Silvermoon is in cahoots with the cultists. Chapter 151, 2 Lil Nuggets. Somewhere outside the city of Silvermoon. Late at night, a teen ranker could be seen traversing through the forest zone. He was constantly looking at a disc in his hands that had one arrow pointed towards the place the teen ranker heading towards. There's an unknown F ranker some distance away from here. Reen, rejoice you'll get to have your late night snack. Aaron said to his demon beast. He wasn't going to hand the cultists to Marla after capturing them like he was ordered to do. Neither was he going to secretly follow them. If one of the big shots of the city of Silvermoon was connected with the cultist, he didn't want to paint a bull's eye on his back by helping the case in any way. And he had his pet to feed anyway. Ernie, don't use your guitars for handling the food. You ruin it with your attacks and waste so much away. Waste not, want not. Let me take care of it nice and easy. Reen didn't want her food getting mutilated by her master. She voiced her displeasure openly while separating herself from his body. She took on the shape of a young girl with just the right features. The demon beast was donned track pants and a hunter's wear as she shape-shifted right into it. Here. Wear this mask. Aaron handed her a mask and wore one for himself as well. Reen was not happy about the design of the mask though. Why do I have to wear these weirdly embroidered masks as well? They don't look good, Ernie. I hope you know that. Ha 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 ha. This style is something I picked up from the guy named Tumko Derrida. He'll get famous for his deeds in the future. Anyway. The mask is eye-catching for a reason. It's so that the enemy registers the mask's design the most and our other detail get blurred as a result. So you have to wear it? Remember Reen, never underestimate any ranker. They have so many ways to get back to you if you leave any clue behind. Aaron had worn the mask while saying these things to his demon beast. He had also shape-shifted into Ron Damien to collude his mana signature. The mask was just a decoy. The cynic in him always thought about the worst outcomes and forced him to prepare a few countermeasures. Aren't you going to at least try to investigate as you've been told to do? Reen asked curiously. She knew her master always did things carefully. If he has abandoned his mission that was given by an adept ranker, there had to be a reason behind it. Not really. The F rankers we will deal with won't know much than what we already know. This combing operation is mostly for targeting E rankers and above. The F rank small fries are just for the show. But you always say that no matter how low a possibility was, we need to take them into the equation as long as they are not zero. Reen asked while keeping the same pace as Aaron while heading towards their target. She had already spread her mana sense, ready to pinpoint the food she was craving for so long. This is not about the high or low possibility of something, Reen. This is about what those possibilities entail. If we don't find any lead, we get home safely without getting ourselves involved in the mess. But if we do find something, no matter what Marla says, we are going to be added to the mess. That is something I wish to avoid. Plus, this girl Lensa suspects something about me. It is better if we get to leave the city without interacting with her again. Target up ahead, 2 o'clock from here. Will you come with me or stay here? Reen had finally located her target with her mana sense. Her saliva was oozing out as she talked. I'll come. No point watching their move when you can one-shot them with ease. Stealth or frontal? Stealth, always. Remember, stab your enemy in the back when you have the terrain advantage. Don't waste time in the killing. Aaron guided his demon beast about their battle plan that mostly relied solely on her. The latter followed his order to AT and decreased her speed and movement sounds. Man, what are we doing here? Are you sure that the person would show up here? We were up all night yesterday and didn't find any trace of them. A guy in his early 20s asked his only partner. They were traversing the same area Aaron was assigned to. The cultists were marching straight to their doom without knowing about their grim destinies. Well, they say that the person has been contract bound to help us for a certain number of instances. And the higher UPS have used one of the instances to call that person here and aid us in our mission during these few days. The other guy looked to be in his late 20s. He was just a step away from crossing the F rank as compared to his impatient colleague who had just barely made it to the solid stage of the same rank. But couldn't that person tell us exact time and place so that we could avoid such pain and ass exploration? Well, if we consider these steps as countermeasures to something, then it means that the person knows we are going to get tracked for our activities. So keep your voice down and focus on the task at hand. We are only supposed to make contact with that person. We let our leader know right away and retreat from there. I don't want to. Too late for that. The person in his late 20s was going to complete what he had to say, but he was interrupted by a young girl's voice. They couldn't locate the source of that voice. But they didn't have to. Because Reen appeared right in the middle of them with her mouth dripping from saliva. It was time for her late-night snack. Chapter 152, ET2 Ari. This was the last line the guy in his early 20s heard. After that, his vision got darker and he stopped feeling his body. This was because Reen transformed into her original form and attacked the weakest link of the duo, as taught by her master. She spread her slimy mass and coated the guy's entire body within it. The guy had almost died inside, making little to no movements when trapped by a C-rank beast. It was just his body getting dissolved inside. The guy that was with him was horrified by the scenes unfolding in front of him. A mana beast of unknown rank had attacked them. And it was devouring one of them like it was no big deal. He tried to run away. But Reen created a rope from her slimy mass and extended it towards the man, tying his legs up as quickly as the guy thought of escaping. Help! Someone, please help us! The guy started shouting and calling for help. Someone in the shadows was irked by his actions. Reen, from now on, you are to prioritize your food doesn't talk when it is being had. Target its mouth first to achieve that. Aaron came out of hiding after saying that. You. Brat, come here and help me. I'll give you all the money and resources that I have. The cultist tried his last resort into tempting someone who unbeknownst to him was his attacker. The latter laughed after hearing the deal he was pitched. As cliched as it may sound, you cannot bribe me with something which is going to be mine anyway. Reen, quick, we are on a schedule here. Aaron ordered his demon beast to hurry up, who was playing with her food. The side dish didn't stop striving for his chance to survive through. Motherfucker. Who are you? Wait. Are you saying you control this horrible creature? Please, I'm begging you, don't do this to me. If it's wealth you want on me, I can give it to you. Aaron didn't want to answer the guy, but he kept on yelling in his direction. Reen was too engrossed in having her current food that she ignored her master's order of shushing her side dish. So the Dark Knight had to say something to shut him up. You misunderstand. What you have on you might be tempting. But it is not our main goal, Mr. Cultist. What my demon beast want from you is your body. She is starving, you see. Only now did the captured cultist realize that these attackers were looking for him. They were probably a part of the squad from the city of Silvermoon. The cultist knew the chances of his survival were low if he didn't do anything about his current situation. Aren't your protocols dictate that the cultists should be taken prisoners first to draw the information from them? I have a lot of information about the current plan the cultists have regarding the city of Silvermoon. The guy tried to milk the fact that he was needed by these rankers to investigate the cultists' activities. Too bad, he met with a certain someone who didn't care about any of that. Yeah. Not interested. Keep that information to yourself and die with it for all I care. Reen, hurry up, girl. The cultist almost spat blood after hearing Aaron's response. He hadn't come across anyone from the rankers faction who breached the protocols assigned to them so brazenly. Wait. I know who we are supposed to meet. I haven't told this to anybody because I only heard my leader say this in passing. I can tell you. The cultist tried to sell the most important information he had in exchange for his life. He thanked his stars he hadn't signed a mana contract with his cultist organization because of his F rank. Otherwise, he would have died before leaking such information. Too bad, there was no buyer to what he was trying hard to give on discount. My man, do you even understand what I just said? We are not interested. Reen finished her first meal. The trace of the first guy she had eaten was nowhere to be found except the ID stone on him. Then she started enveloping her tentacles onto her next meal. The meal-to-be cultist knew this was a life and death moment for him. He didn't care about the attacker reciprocating his wishes or not and said what he knew as a last resort. Hold on. Listen to me. The person who we are supposed to meet has an exclusive stock of frost foam elven ale. This is what I know. Now please. The guy gave out the information he had once heard by chance to his attacker. Hoping the attacker at least takes him under custody after hearing that. But opposite to what he was expecting took place at that time. Fuck. You're dense motherfucker. I had told you I don't want to know. Yet you still gave me the worst information I could ask for. Reen, kill this fucker this instant for me. Aaron's anger erupted after hearing the guy's response. He didn't want to involve himself in this shadow brawl between the cultists and the city of Silvermoon. And yet this idiot of a cultist who just had to value his life more than the information he had came clean to Aaron against his wishes. Reen felt a strong surge of hatred her master had for this guy in her psyche. That prevented her from taking her leisure time to having her food. She quickly snapped the guy's neck with one of her tentacles and absorbed him into her slimy mass next. What do we do now, Ernie? Should we give this information to that Marla woman? Reen assumed her young girl form after having 2 human nuggets. She adjusted her clothes while asking her master about their next set of plans. Why the fuck would I say anything to Marla? It's her fucking friend Arizi Hannah Agnoth who is involved with the cultists if what the guy said was true. I'll just let the woman do her dirty work in the background. Why the fuck should I care about what happens to the city of Silvermoon or its citizen? Now let's clean the traces you have left on the field, collect the ID stones, and get away from this place ASAP. Aaron ordered his demon beast with a grim face and foul mood. He had figured out who the Trojan's horse was inside the city of Silvermoon as soon as the guy talked about the stockpile of Frostfoam ale. Chapter 153, Agatha's Agony. Did you make contact with the cultists? Or do you have any leads? Marla asked her team the next morning after they met up at the inn as they had planned. But all she got was a negative response from all of the teammates. She sighed after knowing her recon plan wasn't bearing any fruit. Alright. Tonight will be the last day. If we don't find anyone tonight as well, then we will have to go back to LA without producing any results. This would affect our mission reward severely, but I'm not too worried about that. What I'm worried about is that the city of Silvermoon might fall into cultists' hands. There are already campaigns taking place in random regions that are drawing races apart from each other. The cultists are funding this cause and someone from the inside is helping them. Yet we can't destroy this channel even when we know so much about it. This is kind of frustrating. Marla said with disappointment laced in her voice. She wanted to help her friend in defending her city. Unknown to the fact that the very fried had shaken hands with the city's enemies. But this was not all. Marla finally gave Aaron the news he was waiting for. Aaron, your request has been processed. You will be presented with the official slave owner contract today by the city's administration. Do remember that you will be held responsible for whatever crimes your slave commits after they sign the slavery contract. The slavery duration is 20 years. After which, Agatha will be set free if her conduct is good and she hasn't committed any crime during her slavery. Aaron was instructed about the master-slave contract. The former listened to the explanation clearly before asking another question. Adept Marla, can I use my slave tonight in completing my mission after the contract formalities get completed today? I don't see why you can't. Feel free to use her. And don't do anything naughty with her just because you can. Hee. Marla said this and chuckled. She knew Aaron didn't come across as a horndog as most teens his age were known to be. She just tried teasing her apprentice a little. She is not my type, Adept Marla. Aaron replied calmly. He didn't become flustered as she thought he would be. What is your type then? Marla asked with some anticipation in her voice. This was not the first time Aaron had replied boldly to her without caring about the difference in their backgrounds. And she appreciated his straight-shooter attitude every time she came across with. Why, it's you, of course, Master Marla. I mean your type. A beautiful yet fierce woman who can take care of me when I'm in a pinch. Hee. The butcher readily admitted having no problem on having to depend on his woman. As if he was trying to find a sugar mommy instead of a partner for him. Ha ha ha. Cheeky. Alright. You guys can rest for the day. Let's commence our mission in the evening as we've done so far. Aaron, someone from the city admin's office will call you today and help you sign the contract. Marla dispersed her team after saying that. Aaron went to his room and rested while awaiting the call from the city's administration. What am I doing here, you terrorist? Let me go. It's you who have hurt us. You should be punished for your vile acts. Not people like us. Aaron's in-room now had a loud resident. It was Agatha, of course. She was sitting on the floor and was unable to move. Because Aaron had told her so. The terrorist Agatha talked about was having his tea while looking outside the window. He could shut her up with one command of his. But he let his new slave rage on. As if he was testing her breaking point. Why are you not even looking at me? Listen, I can't be any use to you. Why don't you let me go? And I can compensate you with something. Agatha said this while looking at her new master with determination in her eyes. She was going to do everything in her power to get rid of the forced enslavement placed on her. What can a lowly slave offer me? Do tell in detail. Aaron finally looked at Agatha from head to toe after he said that. The latter felt goosebumps raised on her back after he did that. But she controlled her nerves and replied boldly. Listen. I don't know much about the cultists' plans. But I can show you one of their hideouts I was at. Agatha was hopeful the fish will take the bait. But alas, what she was fishing was not something that could be attracted with such a weak bait. That hideout is as good as gone after you were captured. Most probably, it must have been turned into a trap so that you can lead me there and get rid of me. So I'll pass. What else? Aaron swooshed his hands like he was swatting a fly while saying that. Agatha controlled her anger after looking at that gesture. This guy was too arrogant, she thought to herself. She came to realize that her parlor tricks won't work against this little terrorist. She needed to give him something solid. Okay. Here's another something that might be important to you. I believe, there is someone in the city of Silvermoon. If you are talking about someone from the city of Silvermoon in cahoots with the cultists, we already know about it. And I'm not interested in any of that either. But this city. I already know about the person who has betrayed the city. Wait. You do? Even I don't know about that. But then why are you not telling? Because there's no benefit for me in doing that. So I'm not interested. What else do you have to buy your freedom with? Agatha was left speechless after knowing her terrorist master's ideologies. Who was the cultist between them exactly? This guy was even worse than the cultists who created unrest in the kingdoms because they wanted to break the shackles placed on the exchange of knowledge about magic and ranking journey. Her new master didn't place importance on philosophical things. He only looked for his benefits and was willing to cross the boundaries of morality like it was no big thing. Agatha took a long breath after throwing the last card she had held onto as a last resort. I can tell you more about the beast bloods and how they turn humans into anthropes. Aaron finally smiled after hearing what he was craving to hear. I'm all ears. He said while finishing what remained of the tea in his cup. Chapter 154, Therianthropy. Aaron said while finishing what remained of the tea in his cup. He fixated his eyes on his slave and gestured her to take a seat nearby where he was. What? What do you want to know about beast bloods? Agatha felt nervous after sitting near her new master. Her instincts were now telling her that this person should never be harmed by her hands. Under any means, at all costs. Otherwise, she would have to face grim repercussions. For starters, tell me what is the object of the beast bloods? From what I know about you guys, every cultist organization focuses on a certain lost path of magic. All that it has done is doing, and will be doing will be linked to that path. So it is easier to predict the beast blood's next moves if I know about their motives. Tell me what you know about this first. Aaron said while tapping his fingers on the surface of the desk table nearby. The tapping sound could be distinctly heard by the young slave, which created a subtle pressure on her psyche. She had to admit that her new master could see through a lot of deceptions with enough information at his disposal. Beast blood's main objective is to successfully revive the lost branch of magic that turns humans into demi-humans. Becoming a therianthrope is the first major one needs to take before they can turn into full-fledged demi-humans. Agatha explained slowly. She watched as the terrorist in front of her, who was lost in a bunch of thoughts, suddenly asked her another question. Demi-humans, huh? I've heard some legends. But that's not important right now. You can partially transform into a mana beast, right? Aren't you a demi-human then? And on that matter, what is the difference between a therianthrope and a demi-human? Agatha seemed like she was expecting those questions to hit her sooner than later. She cleared her throat before answering. The clear distinction between a therianthrope and a demi-human is how they can increase their numbers. The therianthropes cannot pass down their beastly traits to their progeny, whereas the demi-humans should be capable of doing so in theory. This is the most straightforward definition I've heard from my superiors. They also say that the real demi-human transformation is not something we therianthropes can hope to achieve. This path's end goal is for a human to completely transform into a beast when they need to and revert to their original whenever they want to. Agatha finished and looked at another empty teacup set as well as a neat-looking tea kettle placed on the desk table. There were also some snacks present. She was tempted to have those. The prison she was in only took care of her daily necessities. So Agatha was ready to change her palate after all her time spent in that gloomy prison. But she was waiting on the terrorist to allow her to have those. She wouldn't dare touch them otherwise. Aaron saw that the girl was looking at the snacks kept on the table. But he ignored her silent request and verbally marched on. I get that the ranking prowess one could exert while being a demi-human might be more in comparison than what normal humans can do. And that's a good advantage to seek. But I still don't understand why having the ability to pass down your demi-human traits to your progeny is such a big deal. I mean, isn't becoming a therianthrope enough of a success for you guys? If you want to turn your kids like you can always do that when they are born. And then wait for them to start their ranking journey before making them go through the same therianthropy process you did. Simple as that. Why go the extra mile? Aaron didn't know much about the cultists in his previous timelines. He had hunted a few for the bounties on their heads. But he didn't trouble himself to know about their goals or power structure. But the whole thing regarding Reen had made Aaron take an interest in the path Beast Bloods was treading on. That's why he started asking about the organization's information. I'm not too sure about that. They say that the superficial transformation that the therianthropes are used to doing is not enough to tap into the true power of being a demi-human. The real demi-humans would have the bloodline of both the human and mana beast present within them. But the therianthropes only store that blood in their body and trigger a superficial transformation. The beast's blood does not get integrated with our blood in our case. Agatha honestly told Aaron what she knew. The young therianthrope knew that her master was able to discern her lies from truth, thanks to the enslavement contract. If the integration of blood is the key in turning humans into demi-humans, then shouldn't that have been achieved by now? Isn't that what happens with the beast contract? What is stopping you guys from becoming a demi-human? They say it is not easy to get integrated with something that doesn't naturally belong to you. Becoming a demi-human sort of goes against nature. So it's not something that you can achieve on your whims. About the beast contract spell. Yes, it can be regarded as the same as becoming an anthropo in more ways than one. But it has a few key differences. Firstly, we don't need a beast soul trapped within us for it to function the way it should. The beast contract spell requires you to choose the beast that is compatible with your element and inherent nature before forming a contract. We don't need to do that. At most, the anthropo-to-be will only worry about the elemental compatibility. The procedure to turn humans into a therianthrope will harmonize the rest. It will form a symbiotic link between humans and their newly acquired beastly traits while eliminating the beast's soul. Agatha said that and looked away from the desk table. She shouldn't torture herself in false anticipation if this wretched terrorist was not going to offer her the snacks that were just a few inches away from her. Aaron's face painted a clear picture that he was confused about something. He voiced his query without wasting time. Isn't therianthropy a better version of the beast contract spell then? Why is the former hidden from the populace and illegal when compared to the latter? Agatha couldn't help herself from forming a smile on her face after hearing Aaron's question. Exactly. We cultists don't seem crazy now, do we? Chapter 155, Link between Beast Contract Spell and Therianthropy. Chapter 155, Link between Beast Contract Spell and Therianthropy. The slave smirked at her master with that retort. But Aaron gave her no response, indicating that she should proceed further. Yes. The Beast Contract Spell is an inferior version of the Path of Therianthropy. The ability to call forth the beast's soul and make it inhabit the semi-corporeal body made of mana might look like an advantage the contract spell has over Anthropo, but trust me when I say that it is not. You have seen my rapid regeneration abilities. Do you think the integration of beastly features on a superficial level through the contract spell would have been enough for me to survive the tragedy you had bestowed on me? You and I both know it wouldn't. Although what we follow isn't a real deal, it at least goes closer to it. The beast contract spell seems like an amalgamation of multiple schools into one just so that it could function and mimic the effects of therianthropy to some level. So the contract spell can be considered as a copy of something that is deemed as a copy of the original thing. They just added the beast manifestation part by introducing the beast tattoo in the mix to make the spell more attractive than the effects of therianthropy. And this is when I'm only in the F rank. The power of therianthropes exceeds far beyond your imagination when compared to normal ace rankers and beyond. My superior said that the reason various kingdoms came up with the beast contract spell and legalized it within their territories was to prevent us from gaining rebel rankers as loyal followers. Because of that spell, the path of therianthropy was automatically preferred less by the rankers who wanted a boost in their ranking powers. And the kingdoms won in the end. The path of therianthropy was left behind, thanks to the beast contract spell. The kingdoms would charge hefty money to give access to that spell. And rankers would still buy it anyway. Because it didn't contain as many risks as the therianthropy. Agatha finished her statements and looked sneakily at the snacks. She knew that the guy in front of her would not allow her to eat anything from that snack rack. Therefore, now she was trying to salvage her dignity by not coming across as a starving person. Unfortunately for her, she was doing a poor job at it. This is interesting. Very interesting. So the kingdoms created the beast contract spell to counter the path of therianthropy the cultists have. It's like an economic tug of war between two merchants trying to sell the same kind of goods. Looks like I really didn't know how the world worked even back then. I need more data regarding this path of therianthropy. Wait a minute. If the path of misanthropy is so mysterious and the kingdoms don't want rankers exploring that path, why did they allow you to be enslaved by me? Unless. Aaron narrowed his eyes as he paused what he had to say and observed Agatha closely. The latter couldn't help but smile mirthlessly before replying. That's right. The path of therianthropy has a major drawback. The therianthropes can't use normal ranking techniques or spells meant for humans. Spells are not much of an issue. But the ranking techniques for us are really scarce to the point that they can now be regarded as non-existent. And that's not all. The therianthropes face bigger hurdles than normal rankers when they are breaking through the major ranks. The bottleneck can be so frustrating that some therianthropes choose to try extreme means and end up dying in the process. That's why therianthropy is not as widely popular as the beast contract spell anymore. That transcendent spell has many shortcomings, but is it better than the path of therianthropy in this regard? Agatha declared the fatal flaw of the therianthropy. Aaron frowned after hearing what he had just heard before continuing further. So that's why they let you be my slave. They know the chances for you to break into the next rank are almost non-existent. A slave who cannot progress much in their ranking path is only good for mundane slavery. As for the secrecy of the therianthropy path, I can guess that what you've just told me is something most top rankers already know and are researching covertly or overtly. And the biggest disadvantage of this path is enough to discourage the beginner rankers who've just started in their journeys if and when they come to know about the topic. Agatha shook her head before replying. That's not all. They must have also looked through your history and your behavioral profile. The fact that they gave you a therianthrope as a legal slave who also happened to be an ex-cultist means that everything in your file is as per their liking. Plus, that guard's captain has more influence on the city administration than you can imagine. Agatha smelled the air that contained the aroma of baked cookies and sandwiches after she said that. She tried her hardest not to give in to the desires that wanted her to just snatch that snack tray away. But her stomach was now making loud growling sounds. She knew Aaron must have heard those but was acting like he didn't. But the slave owner wasn't paying attention to his slave's small life struggles. He looked at the ceiling as if some understanding had dawned on him. Oh. That means they are counting on my recluse ass to keep things discreet whenever and wherever I can. Well, I can do that. You know awfully a lot about how this stuff works. What were you doing before you became a cultist? Aaron suddenly realized that the slave in front of him must have lived a life before turning into a cultist. Agatha's face became grim after she was asked the question she wasn't expecting in this round of questioning. You want to know what I was doing before turning into a cultist? I'll tell you if you help me get my revenge. Chapter 156, Scaring Agatha into Submission. Agatha looked at Aaron with seriousness written all over her face. This was a long shot, her asking for this terrorist to help her get her due revenge on people who had messed up her entire life. But as expected, Aaron didn't seem interested. He just shrugged his shoulders before replying. What is your revenge has got to do with me? I'm not here to run your errands. You are to do that for me. You should forget about your revenge and focus on mine. Agatha almost spat blood after hearing what the terrorist had just declared casually. He didn't even show a tinge of emotion while saying he wasn't interested in knowing her background. What's more, the guy had his to-do revenge list pre-planned and he wanted her help in achieving the same. Are you really a teen like me? Why do I feel like I am talking to an old man who is too fed up with the world to care about anything other than what he needs? Agatha sighed sadly after looking at her new master. You don't need to worry about me. I am plenty young where it counts and with enough wisdom where it needs. Hee. But one thing I still don't understand. Even if you do achieve your goal and successfully find your way to turn into demi-humans, you'll forever have to stay in hiding. The kingdoms will open a joint front to tackle the guys like you. What lies after you find your way to attain demi-human status? Aaron asked after he got up from his side. He had again started pacing around the room with his hands folded behind his back. As far as he knew and could tell from his experiences, the cultists were radical extremists. But they weren't stupid. That's why he had figured out that their end goal can't simply be to walk on the lost paths of magic or liberate its knowledge from the clutches of the kingdoms. No sane person would think about the well-being of the world before thinking about themselves first. Oh. Ace Reener had told me about this. All the cultist organizations are planning to join hands together and form a free kingdom of their own. All the cultists can become its citizens. And it would be the sole kingdom in which the knowledge related to the ranking techniques and most spells would not remain restricted. At least that's what all the low-ranker cultists believe. The Beast Bloods organization has also been promised an important place within the proposed kingdom. I don't know much apart from this. Now, I've told you all I could. Now can we talk about my freedom? What will be your next condition? If it's sleeping with me, then I can. Agatha wasn't stupid in thinking that giving the information that her new master had demanded from her was all that it was going to take for him to release her. She believed that the guy would think from his groins and make another personal request. That's why she made that part of her deal as well. But she was yet to understand the kind of person her master was. Hee. The information you've given me is still not enough. Agatha had expected this card to get pulled on her. So she remained calm despite the bubble of anger building in her mind and replied. The information I've given is all I have. You cannot expect an F-ranker to know about everything to know about such secretive organizations, can you? You'd be called stupid if you were aiming to gain the juicy details about the cultists from a stray like me. Agatha felt good after dissing her new master indirectly. She knew the slave contract won't harm her since she was only referring to a possibility. The ex-cultist was expecting another rebuttal. But surprisingly the ex-can agreed to that statement. You are right. But it is still not enough to buy your freedom. To be honest, nothing can be enough for me to give you freedom. I just made it look like I was willing to exchange my slave ownership with the information you provided. It was done so that it would encourage you to talk in depth about your initiative. The best form of investigation is when the target is influenced to take the lead to get investigated without anyone doing anything about it. Hee. Yet, I can still grant you a different form of freedom if you want one. Aaron said this and smiled sweetly. Agatha had goosebumps after witnessing that smile. She asked the butcher with doubt and suspicion laced in her shaky voice. What? What kind of freedom are we talking about? Eternal freedom, of course. The freedom from all miseries that this life has served in your platter. Tell me quickly, do you wish to have this freedom? Agatha finally understood what Aaron wanted to convey. He was ready to silence her for good in the name of granting her freedom. Her instincts to survive the potential threat coming her way triggered her to cast her therianthropic transformation while she said this. I'd suggest you don't assume that things will go smoothly like the last time they did for you. Here, in this room, you cannot use those bombs. And my transformation is enough. Ha ha ha. Little lass, you forgot that I can do whatever I want with you while ordering you to not retaliate. Although I will be questioned for my slave's death, it won't be too bothersome for me. Especially since you were an ex-cultist. Plus, who said anything about using potion bombs? Reen, come out. Aaron was right. Agatha had nearly forgotten at that brief moment that she was now a slave of Aaron who could do anything with her. And her eyes opened wide in horror because she received another shock. Chapter 157, Targeting Cultist Hideout. Reen, come out. Reen suddenly manifested in front of Agatha as soon as her master called her out. The former looked at the slave in disgust before saying, This won't even be an appetizer for me, Ernie. You should have arranged for more food. Said the demon beast in a young girl's voice that was laced with a lot of complaints. Then she opened her mouth unnaturally and showed her sawtooth-like teeth that were glistening with saliva. Agatha felt like her soul had left her body. The visual horror of seeing a young girl open her mouth like that was horrible enough. But Reen also released a hint of her mana signature which scared the SHT out of Agatha. A seer ranker? No. A seer rank beast. That too in a human form. This thing here is a demon beast. Agatha's pale face was finally painted with a grim realization. She couldn't have imagined that her new master was the owner of a demon beast as well, apart from her. Only now did the ex-cultist realize that her act of rebelling against her new master was not only foolish but also suicidal. And now Agatha was going to get eaten alive by the demon beast. This was the worst way to die for her. She wanted to exact her revenge before she met the angel of death. But it would have to remain a dream if she doesn't do anything about it. Sir Aaron. I'm sorry. I was mistaken to ask for the annulment of the contract before its due completion date. I promise that I'll do all I can to follow your commands from now on. Please don't kill me. Agatha finally made a desperate attempt to save her life. She kowtowed in front of Reen and Aaron while she made her plea. Let me be clear that you won't be free from us even when the contract gets completed. Not the way you want at least. Tell me, are you still ready to serve me? Said Aaron while closing in on Agatha, walking behind Reen. He said that amusingly, but the target of that statement didn't find anything funny in it. And yet, she couldn't help but smile mirthlessly before replying. All right. I'll stay as your slave forever. Please spare my life. Agatha thought what she said was enough to halt the demon beast's march. But the latter just kept heading her way. What are you doing? I've cooperated in every way, Sir Aaron. And I won't even. He. Agatha was trying to pitch her case but was interrupted by Reen's fun laughter. The former thought her end was near when the demon beast stood right in front of her, looking down on her potential food. Don't worry. This was just to nudge you in the right direction. I was talking to Aaron about the snacks on the table behind you. Now step aside. Said Reen and waited for Agatha to step aside. She had kowtowed near the chair so it was difficult to get to the snacks before pulling the chair. It took a while for the young therianthrope to understand what Reen was saying. She hastily moved to the side after hearing that Reen wasn't targeting her. Reen started walking again. And said something in a low voice when she went past the ex-cultist. From now on, avoid sneaking a peek at food meant for me. I don't like it when my food is being ogled by others. Yes, madam. Thank you for letting me know about your habits. I'll certainly remember that. And I apologize for staring at your food. It wasn't my intention to do that. Sigh. Stop that. Ernie doesn't like a subservient attitude at all. Act normally like you always do. Just follow the orders given to you and you'll be good. Said Reen without looking back at Agatha. She sat on the chair Aaron had used then started eating the snacks the inn had provided. Get up now, Agatha. What can you tell me about these tokens? Aaron threw 2 tokens that had a bunch of beast carvings at one side and a runic mini-array at the other. They were some form of access tokens. But Aaron couldn't figure out much after that point. Aaron had seized these tokens from Reen's cultist victims that she had just recently. They were stored inside the guy's ID stones respectively. Oh. These are standard issue beast blood tokens meant to be used by F rankers. But where did you get these from? Reen's food sometimes gives souvenirs. Anyway, what are these tokens used for? Agatha tried not to think about the grim fates her fellow cultists must have faced in the hands of these two monsters. But she was failing miserably at the task. These tokens are used to access our hideouts. But the one I know doesn't use these tokens. They must belong to another hideout that I'm not aware of. Agatha answered honestly. She had figured out that her fate was now tied to this vile duo. There was no running away from them. She might as well cooperate with them fully to score some brownie points in their books. One had to admit that Agatha was a flexible person. And she had a survivor's spirit. It seems you have started to warm up to us. Hee. Good. Now, how can we locate the new hideout? Do you have any means? Aaron asked Agatha, who answered him after nodding at him. Yes. Every beast blood F ranker has been given an element neutral spell that can pinpoint the location of the hideout if you have the respective token with you. This is done so that the members don't get lost while returning from completing their missions. Aaron and Reen smiled at each other after they heard Agatha's statement. They knew tonight's recon was going to be more than fruitful for them. Chapter 158, Not Taking Prisoners. So? Where do we go from here? Aaron asked Agatha, who had held the beast blood token in her hand. She would often close her eyes from time to time and tighten her grip around the token to confirm that she was going in the right direction. The direction was shown by the spectral arrow projected over the token. Aaron's small squad was out to comb the area for potential cultist activities. That was the official mission given to them anyway. But Aaron used this opportunity to launch a sneak attack on another hideout he got to know, thanks to Agatha and two cultist victims of Reen. Just up ahead. Around 300 meters from here. What are we going to do once we get there? I don't think members from this hideout will recognize me. Agatha expressed her worries as she kept on traveling ahead of Aaron and Reen. All three of them were all wearing Tumco Derrida-style face masks, making them look like some form of rebellious rankers squad. What else? Plunder all this hideout has untherianthropy as well as money, and other resources in store. Aaron said it was the most obvious thing in the world. And what about the people inside? What about them? Aaron and Reen both looked at Agatha confusingly when she asked about how they were going to deal with the cultists present at the base. It was obvious to them that their death was a foregone conclusion. Aaron had asked about the possible level of rankers present at the hideouts to Agatha. The ex-cultist had informed him that the hideouts that are accessed by F rankers shouldn't contain a presence beyond E ranker. Why are we shifting our base of operation all of a sudden? A young cultist asked her senior when she was helping her pack some stuff up. They were inside what looked to be a smuggler's den inside a large and wide cave. Because we suspect the causality of two F rankers who belong to this hideout. It seems that the city of Silvermoon doesn't know about their deaths or isn't involved in the same. But we can never be too sure about something. The higher UPS don't want to take chances. The lady who was packing the stuff replied while continuing her work. She was asked to complete the procedure for total abandonment of the space as soon as possible. She too had some questions of her own regarding the order she had received from her higher UPS. But for now, she decided it was best to ensure her safety first. But this is the most secure place we know. I don't think we can find a geographically advantageous place like this anytime soon. The cave's entrance was protected by the array. And it was also hidden from the outside world, thanks to the illusion R created. Only the Beast Blood cultist members that had access to the tokens could get inside. This was an auxiliary base for the Beast Bloods, separate from the regular base that was active in the region. Not every member of the organization had access to it. They didn't even know about its existence. The young cultist thought that the higher UPS were acting scared without a valid reason behind their actions. Things were finally going good for him. He now had a normal life that was kept apart from the usual cultist activities he had to do. And this was all thanks to the proximity the space had with the city of Silvermoon. He wasn't too keen on moving out of the space because of that. I still think this is a hasty decision. This base is as safe can be. Maybe we should. The guy was going to continue his pestering but was interrupted by something in his throat. He looked down and saw that a guitar had pierced his throat from the back. The sharp pointy end of the weapon had made it through the guy's Adam's apple and was now coated in the blood. The guy, who thought that the base of their operation was safe, died at this moment. Before even knowing what his mistake was. The date he had planned in the city of Silvermoon under the guise of being a normal ranker had been punctured along with his windpipe. The guy's senior soon joined him in the afterlife. He died from his head getting separated from his torso. Please. I'm telling you. The cultists are not the monsters you think we are. At least not these F rankers. Why must you kill them when you can scare them off and still get what you want from this place? Agatha pleaded with her master and his demon beast to leave the low-ranker cultists alive. She joined the duo from behind who was busy planning how to reap more lives. Agatha, I don't want to enforce the slavery restrictions on you because it is too bothersome and distracting. But I will if you don't start lifting your weight in this team. Do you understand? You want me to kill them. Why do you sound so surprised? It is very hypocritical of you to only attack rankers for your gain and leave the cultists be just because they might be like you, forced by the circumstances to join the organization. Aaron said while cleaning the edge of the guitar with the guy's clothes he had just killed. But Agatha wanted to defend her stance. Aren't we all hypocritical then? You want to remain a ranker while studying the lost paths adopted by the cultists. You are on the so-called right side of things, yet you are killing the cultists that can be let go with lighter punishments. Agatha thought she had won the war of words against her master with the statement she had made. But Aaron just chuckled in response after hearing about his slave's retort. I'm not the hypocrite here. At least not right now. This is no manhunt of cultists like you think it is. You are wrong if you think that I don't hesitate to kill them just because they happen to be cultists. I would have killed them anyway if they were normal rankers, all the same. Now less talking, more killing. Reen, Agatha. Start killing all the cultists and rankers in this area. I don't want a single survivor. And we are not taking any prisoners. Said Aaron before marching forward. He had just issued a massacre of cultists with his brief speech. Chapter 159, Massacre. A scene of massacre unfolded in front of Agatha's eyes. She saw mutilated bodies laid on the ground that were releasing a thick smell of blood. But she couldn't see the pool of blood as the den was poorly lit. She could find solace in the fact that the cultists didn't care about optimizing the visibility inside the den. And it wasn't like she wasn't involved in this massacre. Her hands and her clothes were painted in the cultists' blood as well. She had to do her master's bidding after all. Numerically, most damages were done by her master's demon beast. Reen's mere presence was enough to make the poor cultists freeze in their tracks. And then she would just take her sweet time digesting them up. But her killings would not leave any bodies behind. Aaron on the other hand would just hack through his opponents like an unstoppable force. Sometimes it was hard for Agatha to follow his movements with her eyes. The teen would just disappear from his place only to appear a few meters away from his initial positions. And the opponent would have already lost their limbs by the time that happened. It was difficult for Agatha to make a sense out of Aaron's way of killing his opponents in the most brutal way possible without even batting an eye. She felt that her master was no teen doing these battle-hardened activities. Only then she did realize that the terrorist didn't need the potion bombs to overwhelm her. He could have dealt with her just as easily even when he hadn't used those explosives. Collectively, the trio must have killed around 40 F-rank and 1 E-rank cultists by now. They had cleared an entire cultists organization's branch all by themselves even without forming a proper party. Stop staring like that and get to work. Reen won't be able to finish all the bodies and my ID storage can only store so much. Use yours to store a few intact ones and get the rest in one place. Aaron ordered Agatha after he killed the last cultist youngster who was trying to run away from the scene. He had really meant it when he said there would be no survivors. Wait, what do you mean by storing bodies in storage? Why would you even think of doing something like this? Agatha asked with a shadow of grimness spread on her face. She regretted joining the cult after she stopped being one. Because it was the reason behind her ending up as this monster's slave. Isn't it obvious? Reen likes fresh food. But she can eat the one in storage when she is feeling a little peckish. Agatha felt like puking after she heard that. She thought that her master was taking the bodies to leave fewer clues behind. But he was thinking of feeding his demon beast in his spare time. In Aaron's defense, he had to be efficient when it came to feeding Reen. Her appetite was no joking matter. And he couldn't just kill random civilians and make him a target of the high-ranked entities. Killing cultists served multiple purposes for Aaron. So he didn't think about sparing any of them at all from the very beginning. Agatha had to follow her master's orders. She and Aaron took a few intact bodies in their ID storage. Then they started to gather the remaining ones to create a pile. A mini mountain of chopped up bodies and organs was created in a while. Agatha already felt numb to all these activities. She still wasn't comfortable in doing the things her master was asking from her. But her survival nature made her come to terms with her current reality. What will we do now? Even if we burn the bodies up, the historians would find some clues or the other. Agatha asked while wiping her bloody hands on a piece of fabric she had torn from a dead cultist's jacket. She had come to realize that Aaron wasn't that stupid to believe that mere burning the bodies would get him out of the massacre he had created here. I'll take care of that. Reen reformed herself into that of a young girl and said after finally digesting her last body for the day. She felt content after having a hearty meal after a long time. You can't this mountain now, can you? Agatha asked with suspicion on her face. Raising a demon beast who seemed to hit their growth spurt sure wasn't easy. She thought to herself. Sigh. Sadly, no. I mean I can, but it'll take a while. And Aaron doesn't want us to wait that much here. So I'll just partially consume them. That will collude with the mana signature residues, making it difficult for the historians to know about us. Reen didn't find anything wrong in telling Agatha about her powers. She knew from Aaron's thoughts that he would never let her go alive once she had been taken in as his slave. Agatha had asked about how Aaron had obtained Reen and from where. He told her just enough to give her some basic understanding of the demon beast. Reen finished her job. Now the scene of the massacre was difficult to retrospect even with the historian's spells. Aaron found a few barrels of earthen oil inside the den. He used the same oil and lit the whole thing inside it shortly after. Soon, the fire will consume the entire inside of the den and spill outside. There would remain only ash as a sign of something that had existed inside this natural cave. But Aaron's team didn't wait that long enough. They had already looted the cultists' treasury located at the inner sanctum of the cave. Now waiting any more would simply be foolishness they weren't willing to commit. Agatha had cold shivers as she traveled with her two teammates. They had just committed the mass killing and all these two would do was nod at each other from time to time while making faces that said it wasn't a big deal. It was as if the entire conversation had happened in their heads. Chapter 160, Wingman. Did you find anything useful? Marla asked her teammates the next day when they met up. She wasn't expecting any result from her last recon either. But surprisingly Aaron came forward before reporting. Master Marla, I might have found something. I had discovered a presence last night with Agatha's help so I followed it up as per your instructions. The chase lasted for about 2 hours before my cover was blown. I tried chasing that person but he just disappeared out of the blue. I can give you the details of my pursuit and show you the place on the map where I lost track of him. Marla raised her eyebrows before nodding at Aaron. She pulled a map scroll from her storage and laid it in front of him. The latter didn't waste time and gave her the exact details of his chase. Marla immediately contacted a few personnel and arranged another squad of E-rankers with the city administration's help. She was made to believe that Aaron was in the proximity of the cultist hideout. Hence the preparations. Aaron knew that the place was going to get found out sooner or later. The city's hotshot captain Arizi Hannah Agnoth was playing on the enemy's side. She would find out something was wrong with her contact in a few days. So there was no merit in keeping the crime scene a secret. By becoming the information provider, Aaron would have a valid reason for traces of his presence near the crime scene. And anything unexplainable would get chalked under the anomaly created by Reen with her mana collusion. Aaron also wanted some form of reward from the city administration for his hard work, even when it wasn't done for his employer. He would never say no to free money and resources. Plus, the butcher had again struck rich with the hideout's treasury. And he also had a lot of study material, scrolls, books, and research papers regarding therianthropy and other miscellaneous information about the lost paths of magic. That alone would get sold for a fortune in the black market. But Aaron hadn't robbed these study materials to make bucks off of them. He genuinely wanted to study and learn this path and see if he could make better use of it using his demon beast. Marla left the inn right after she told the teammates to disperse. She was going to lead the team of E-rankers. She would eventually find out the crime scene Aaron had left for her to find. And then they'd return to LA. It was going to take another day for that to happen. During this day, Lensa came to meet the team members again. She wanted to talk with Aaron more. But the butcher made some excuse and left the inn faster than he left his crime scene. Ken, what did your family decide about Lensa? Almera asked Ken while they were making their way back to LA. They had completed their mission and found the cultists burned to cinders hideout. Ken sighed before replying. My family only sees profit in the mess I didn't even create willingly. They are more than happy for me to tie the knots with Lensa. Someone from my family will meet with the Karens and come to a formal arrangement. For now, Lensa and I have both told our families that we'll be focusing on our studies. But if all goes well according to our family's plans, then an engagement will take place within a year. We are both helpless. For now, we've decided to become friends. And deal with the issue of the engagement a year after that. Ken replied with stoic expressions. His face looked perfect when the energizing rays of the dawn kissed his skin. It was as if a prince was riding to unknown lands with a cause greater than him and everyone he cared about. Isn't it great, Ken? I mean you got an elf for a fiancé now. Well, almost a fiancé. But she is pretty and seems cool to hang out with too. You have the luck of a protagonist, my friend. Makes me envious. Hee hee. Aaron said while guiding his colt. Agatha was right behind him whereas Ken and Almera were on either side. This time, Marla was leading them from the front. Ken seemed to be touched by his friend's words. He gave his signature smile to the one who had brought that mess on him before replying. You are right as always, Aaron. And Lensa intends to make friends with you too, You know. She told me that you were all praises for me that day when she asked you about me. Thanks, man. I now know that you have my back. Oh yeah, Lensa told me that she'd come to meet us in LA sometime. We can find a nice girl for you two by then and go on double dates. That'd be fun. Haha. Ken offered to be Aaron's wingman magnanimously. Aaron could only smile mirthlessly at that. He didn't know what to say to the guy who he had cooked. Without the intention to do so in the beginning. Hee. I hope you guys haven't bought those strange elven ales in stock. Otherwise, things might go wilder than they did last time. Almera's taunt landed right on Ken, who immediately had a sullen face hearing that. It seemed that he would not even go within a mile's range of someone drinking the debuff potion of an ale. Aaron and Marla laughed heartily at Almera's timely punch. But soon the atmosphere became serious when Almera asked the dear ranker about their mission's details. Adept Marla, what happened to the cultist hideout? And what did you find there? Marla furrowed her eyebrows after hearing the question directed at her. Then she took a deep breath before slowing down the speed of her colt. Marla had told her teammates that they'll talk about the mission's results after they left the city of Silvermoon. And it was now time to fulfill that promise. Chapter 161, Conspiracies. So we finally found the cultist hideout, thanks to the clues given by Aaron, but it seems we were too late. The place was already in ruins by the time we got there. And Marla took some time before replying. And there was no cultist alive at the scene. We don't know who, someone who might or might not belong to another cultist organization, had raided the place before us. And they didn't just stop at the raid. They also killed all the cultists present at the hideout. The scene would have been gory, to say the least by our preliminary investigations. But other than that, the city's historians are having a hard time getting anything else from the scene. They are saying there's some kind of residual monic illusion that is affecting their class-specific spells. That's why we don't know the identity of the person who committed a massacre there. Or if he was with his team. Because this does not look like a one-man job. That's right, babe. It was a three-person job. Aaron said this in his head before raising a question to his master. Master Marla, why are you saying that there's a possibility that it might be another cultist organization that did the massacre? Wasn't Beastbloods a cultist organization itself? I'd imagine birds of the feather flock together. Marla looked at Aaron as if only now coming to understand that he was, in fact, a teen. He had shocked her with his wits and intelligence so much that she had started to treat him as an adult. She chided herself for that before replying. Aaron, you might see the cultists as normal rankers. But they are not. And they don't operate as normal rankers do. They have their own set of rules that are based on a certain ideology, survival of the fittest. We rankers also believe in that ideology. But we are not fanatics about it. But cultist organizations would never hesitate to lose an inch to win a mile. They don't care about the members of their organization. Do you think they'll care about others just because they are also cultists like them? Only profits and power are eternal in a cultist organization. They can easily make cooperative bonds within themselves depending upon the situation. And they can break them just as easily if and when there's profit involved in doing that. Sighed Marla after looking first at Aaron and then at Ken. The latter also nodded his head after that, confirming to her that he had understood. But what benefits can a rival cultist gang have to raid the place? And isn't this time too coincidental? Someone raided the place just before it was discovered by us. Did they want us to find the place in the exact condition we found it to be? Aaron asked with confusion written all over his face. The butcher was just trying to dig into what information the investigation team had collected so far. That's why he asked the question in that way. Aaron, you are smart. But you don't know about how cultists work, it seems. Ask Agatha when you have free time, she'll tell you. Cultists only look for benefits. And there's a benefit involved in raiding other cultist organizations' hideouts. We found the treasury that was looted from the place. That could be the motive. Another could be that Beastbloods itself wanted to get rid of some of their members for some reason. But it's as you said. Some clues had been deliberately behind. We have also come to the same conclusion that the ones who destroyed this hideout wanted us to find out about it. The chase Aaron was involved in might have been staged from the get-go. Maybe just to close the case on this for good. Marla concluded her statement and looked at Almera with a meaningful expression. The latter couldn't help but blurt out suddenly. The city administration. Almera looked at the dear ranker and the latter nodded at her before continuing. That's right. That's why I didn't want us to talk about this subject within the city's limits. Some of the close confidants I have in the city of Silvermoon's administration department think that this hideout was brought out in the light to close a case on something we are not aware of as of yet. Up till now, we had only suspected that someone in the city's administration is involved with the cultists. But this incident confirms it. Boy, I love me some conspiracies. They are the best covers for guys like me. I didn't even have to take much effort in nudging them in the right direction. They'll be at each other's throats without me even doing anything about it anymore. As long as my cover stays safe, that is. Aaron could finally take a breath of relief after hearing updates about his latest missions from Marla. The part of the city administration that was loyal to the kingdom was suspecting the unknown force within it that had gone to the cultist side. And Aaron was sure, Arizi Hannah would think that this call of cultists in the shadows was organized by the city administration itself. And she was kept out of the loop because it suspected her of betrayal. This seed of suspicion planted in the minds of people from both sides will allow Aaron to keep his involvement under the wraps. At least that's what it looked like to him. That's all fine, adapt Marla. But what about our rewards? The Scrooge in Aaron finally spoke up. Agatha couldn't help but shake her head after hearing what her master had just said. The guy had just looted a hideout all to himself. And he was still seeking petty rewards. Oh, shush you miser boy. You will get them. In MERPs of course. Wait till we get back to LA. Marla said and made her colt gallop ahead. The team was returning to where it came from. Chapter 162, Mancherie. Why did you betray us? Arizi Hannah Agnoth heard the question directed at her. She was at an underground facility and talking to a spectral image that was projected above an array eye. The question was asked by this spectral image that seemed to have a blurry and unrecognizable visual profile. Ari was pissed by hearing the question directed at her. She gripped her swords hilt hard before replying. Me betraying you? I should be the one asking the same question to you. You told me you would initiate contact with me in a few days. And I was waiting for days on end. And suddenly I got the news that one of your hideouts has been found out. My payment is due and the ones who were going to do that just had to go down in cinders. How are you going to compensate me for my promised payment plus this delay now? The spectral image was silent for a while before replying. The city of Silvermoon is up to something. Did any news leak from your end? Nope. Why would I jeopardize myself by telling anyone about anything related to you guys? It seems I was wrong in listening to you. You were always going to stab me in the back, didn't you? The spectral shadow couldn't help but chuckle after hearing Ari's response. It wasn't long before it clapped back. Ari, my Mancherie. Why would Beast Bloods betray you when it was just about to receive its biggest award from you? I think there's some misunderstanding between us. And it's fine if you don't want to trust cultists. Because the cultists are the bad guys, right? But can't you trust your lover in this? Ari's anger was at its peak when she heard a hypocritical answer from that spectral shadow. Trust your lover? You were the one who started with why did you betray us? And you are telling me I should trust you because we are in a relationship. The spectral image took a long sigh before trying to pacify the woman who had been scorned. I was just testing you, Mancherie. Of course, I didn't mean that. I have a few responsibilities to my organization, you see. The ones that force me to ask such questions and be done with it. But you can trust me when I say that we didn't betray the deal we had from our end. Didn't betray, you say? You didn't even tell me the side effects of the potion recipe you gave me to break into D rank. I would have died in a few years if it wasn't detected at this stage. Said Arizi Hannah while taking long breaths. Her chest was rising and lowering rapidly, a testament to the kind of visible anger she felt towards the spectral image. The spectral image again went silent before saying melancholically. The bastards didn't tell me. They were planning to kill you with the deal and were using me as the medium. I mean, I knew the water was always murky with the cultists. But I didn't know that they could be so insidious as well. So you're telling me you didn't know about the potion side effects? No, Mancherie. Honest. Why would I let my beloved Ari go through the deal if I knew it was rigged from the beginning? Are you sure about the side effects though? Yes. I'm sure. I checked with the city's finest healer and came to know about the same. Ari answered. She was still angry. But one could say that it was subsidizing. Are you alright? The side effects are gone. The spectral image asked with concern. Ari just puffed her cheeks before answering. I'm fine, no thanks to you. The side effects are still there. But they'll be gone in a few months. Nothing to worry about anymore. Not that you seem to care anyway. And how did you come to know about the potion side effects? Because they have to be extremely covered if I know my poti wunning right. Ari gave the spectral shadow answer to her question while pacing about in underground place. Yes, the side effects were going to stay hidden until the last moment. My mana circuit was going to erode slowly in the span of a few years before the by then unstabilized core imploded. Some errand kid guessed the side effects, can you believe it? I wonder what that tells you about your poti wunning skills. Ari then told the apparent poti wunner about the events that came to pass after she met Aaron's team. The spectral image couldn't help but conclude what it had on its mind after hearing it got from Ari. Aaron Idril, huh? The kid must be a prodigy in poti wonning for him to detect the side effects even I couldn't foresee. That and his background of working under a C-rank healer must have helped him. Anyway. The kid is not important. Tell me more about our darling Marla. Hee. I'm sure she must be missing me a lot. She is. But that won't stop her from cutting you in half if you go in front of her. What are we even going to do about her? Ari asked with a hint of worry. The spectral shadow seemed to have flicked before replying. Well, it's not like I didn't try to get her to my side. Only you could understand me and my plight. But she didn't even make an effort to do so. To be honest, even I'm clueless about how we should deal with Marla. We'll need to meet in person to decide something like this. Plus, I haven't had the pleasure to embrace you in a long time now. This should serve as a good reason. Hee. Oh. Now you need a reason to spend time with me? Wow. I should just spank your ass the next time we meet. Unlike you, I don't need a reason to do that, you see. Ari let go of her sword's hilt and folded her hands under her bosom before replying. One could see that her anger had faded into nothingness at this point. What she was displaying right now was only a tantrum. The spectral image chuckled and took a sigh before voicing its next concern. It seems the side effects are nothing to worry about if you are this dandy about our next rendezvous. I'll gladly offer my plush ass for you to spank, hee. And don't worry, mon chéri. We'll have our revenge on the Beast Bloods. We were planning to run from the Edinburgh Kingdom anyway. I'll just fuck with the cultists too if that's how they want to play it. But not right now. They still have something I want. So listen to me one more time. We'll play it cool. For now, let's keep things strictly professional. I'll tell you about my plans later on when the next time I contact you. That's it for now, mon chéri. Take care and see you soon. Said the spectral before disappearing soon after. Ari sighed after seeing the shadow of the person she loved disappearing on her without even giving her a chance to say goodbye. From the looks of things, it didn't look like she was experiencing this frustration for the first time. Long-distance relationships were hard. Ari could attest to that. She left soon after that and the underground area was engulfed by darkness. Aaron didn't know that he had changed the fate of a lot of people along with the city of Silvermoon by his violent actions. And it's not like the butcher would have cared even if he did. Chapter 163, Bonus Chapter Simmering Sienna Up. At the border checkpost of LA grounds, a pair of students could be seen engaged in a fast-paced duel. They were both exceptionally skilled for their ages and ranks. But the one who was observing and guiding them didn't seem too impressed. Ken, this is the last time I'm warning you. Don't pull your punches when you see an opening. Aaron is more skilled than you when it comes to countering the attacks. He'll be able to take your hits. And Aaron, I think you've gotten very skilled in using the arts I taught you in such a short span. But you seem heavily dependent on your response speed and leave some openings. Adopt a stance such that you don't have to wait for a counter. Even if you are baiting your opponent into it, using the same trick twice won't work on the same opponent. I'll include some stances and positions for you to practice your body's balance with. You'll have to incorporate them into your daily routine. You too can. Your daily routine will change along with Aaron. I want to see the improvements I just mentioned in your next duel. Now take a rest for a few minutes. You guys are on border patrol duty today. Said Marla and left her two apprentices to their devices. She had finished her work. Now it was time for her to savor the ale that she had brought from the city of Silvermoon. It had been a few days since Aaron's team was back on the academy's grounds. The frost foam was the reason the boys were left with a lighter workout. Otherwise, it would have been much worse than their current exhausted condition. Aaron and Ken flashed mirthless grins at each other after they were allowed to stop their duels. The duo was just about to commence their border patrol when they heard a voice from behind them. Ken. Ken Riverine. Please wait up. Aaron and Ken both turned simultaneously and saw a vivacious girl heading their way. She had red eyes and black hair. Her face was sleek and her figure was slender and tall. Yet she had curves where they mattered the most. The girl's skin was clear and had a rosy tinge. And her clothes were all kinds of expensive. Ken seemed to have recognized the girl and he gave her a welcoming smile. Aaron on the other hand tried his hardest to control his killing intent. This was because she was none other than Sienna Slughorn. You mean it? I told you I need to learn martial arts from you. You even promised me that you'd provide me with some guidance. But then you just had to go ahead and go out on a mission. I could have used your help to improve my ranking, you know. Sienna complained as soon as she caught up with Ken. The latter couldn't help but chuckle before replying. Ha ha ha. I couldn't help it. Master Marla had a mission for us. We had to go do a few things in the city of Silvermoon. But I'm back now. I can probably give you a few pointers tomorrow. At this time and place. Sienna flashed her million-eddy smile after hearing her sugar daddy's reply. She was about to enjoy her small victory and nudge the White Knight into interacting more with her. But a spoiler came from behind, barging into the duo's conversation with a carefree attitude. He patted Ken's shoulder before replying loudly. "Look at this guy. Can't hide his joy after all. Telling everyone he had done a few things at the city of Silvermoon. Hee. I wouldn't belittle them like this, my man." Aaron looked at Sienna and grinned at her. She could see the guy seemed happy about his friend's achievements, whatever they might be. But there was something about his smile that irked her. She couldn't help but ask the intruder what he was talking about. "Hello. Name Sienna Slughorn. You seem to be Aaron Idril, the guy Ken often talks about. A pleasure to finally meet you." "Oh, hello Miss Sienna. Who doesn't know the scion from the Slughorn household coming to LA? Hee. Pleasure's all mine." Aaron, can you tell me what you meant when you said Ken was belittling his achievements? I know he often does that. That's why I never get straight answers from him. So I'd like it if you could shed some light on that if you don't mind," Sienna said while pinching Ken's arm. She tried to act all cozy. But one could say that Ken seemed a little uncomfortable interacting with her now. That was starting to irk Sienna even more. She felt that there was something wrong with her approach to catch Ken in her net. It wasn't working as effectively as it used to be. "Oh, so you don't know? I had heard that you guys were good friends. So I assumed that you would be kept in the loop. But it seems that my man Ken is too shy to say the kind of stunt he had pulled in the city. Hee. Who can blame him anyway?" Aaron slipped a subtle meaning that Sienna wasn't trusted by Ken anymore to share his secrets with. And the meaning landed right on its intended spot. Sienna furrowed her brows. Then she smiled awkwardly before retorting. Hee. What can I say? Ken is just a tight-lipped fellow, you see. Oh, he wasn't so tight-lipped when he was in the city Silvermoon. His lips were all over the place on someone. At least I assume they were. My man here has now started living his life to the fullest, I'd say. Aaron said that and gave a meaningful pat on Ken's back before chuckling slyly. The latter just scratched his head before smiling awkwardly in response. Sienna had a grim foreboding after looking at the boys' interaction. It was the kind of interaction she had seen guys do when they had some good times with their dates. What do you mean, Aaron? State things. One could hear a tinge of irritation in Sienna's voice no matter how skillfully she tried to make it. But Aaron didn't mind. He was enjoying the reaction. The girl's face was changing colors as she subconsciously understood what must have happened with Ken. The butcher decided to hammer the final nail in the coffin with his joyous statement. You'd be surprised after hearing Sienna. Ken's luck is too awesome, to say the least. My man now has a beautiful elf fiancée. Hee, said Aaron and planted a punch at Ken's stomach lightly. Then he saw Sienna's reaction with the corner of his eyes. Chapter 164, Raising a Ranger. You'd be surprised after hearing the Sienna. Ken's luck is too awesome, to say the least. My man now has a beautiful elf fiancée. Hee, said Aaron and planted a punch at Ken's stomach lightly. Then he saw Sienna's reaction with the corner of his eyes. And he wasn't disappointed with what he saw. The rosy tint on Sienna's face was replaced with pale countenance before the redness came back again. But this new shade of red wasn't an indication of her charm. But rather than of the anger that was bubbling inside her. Ken, what does this guy mean? Sienna asked Ken loudly. Ken made a weird face at her reaction, but then he shrugged it off and told her everything. Of course, Aaron spiced things up than what was necessary and thoroughly enjoyed another pay-per-view he was craving to see. Sienna left abruptly. Ken wanted to follow her, but Aaron held him back, saying they had border patrol to finish. The guy couldn't help leaving Sienna to her devices on the advice of someone who was the mastermind behind his misfortune turned into a fortune. Aaron wanted to burn the bitch up on a stake for what she did to him in the previous timeline. But he knew now was not the time. And death would be an easy release. He wanted her to keep on living in anger, agony, and everything in between, the same way he had lived in his past life. But his plans on the bitch had to be put on a halt. He had too many things to do in his hands these days. The duo soon completed their task and was back at the checkpost in the early evening. They were only required to patrol a limited area after all. Someone was waiting on Aaron and Ken when they were about to part ways. Good job, boys. Open up your ID stone interfaces. I'll update your daily routine on Adept Marla's behalf. Aaron and Ken looked at each other weirdly, but they followed Almera's orders. But not without Aaron asking the latter about the dear ranker's whereabouts. Sigh. She OD'd on the frost foam and now shivering inside her room. That's why I had to take special privileges from her to update your routine. Aaron had beads of sweat after looking at the updated daily routine. He was just beginning to get comfortable with his current schedule. But this progressive overload of exercise along with newly added stance practices made things difficult for him again. Ken wasn't in better condition either. But Aaron knew the White Knight's chiseled body was capable of handling any exercise Marla could throw his way. That is enough for the day. You can leave it, there's nothing else. And don't slack off. We might need to go on a few missions sooner than you think. Ken nodded at Almera, patted Aaron back and left on his own. But the butcher stayed behind. He wanted to try his luck and request something from Almera. What is it, Aaron? Oh, it's nothing, Ace Almera. I was just wondering if you can teach the in and outs or ranger to one of my friends. Aaron was talking about Renita Diabrio, of course. The girl needed serious training in her class that wasn't limited to combat abilities. He wanted her to be proficient in the non-combat expertise of a ranger, and there was only one way to do it. Make her learn from a good ranger. A ranger like Almera. Aaron had seen her ranger capabilities when they were on their first mission together. He was very satisfied with the way the ranger performed. Renita used monoguns while Almera used crossbows. So there wasn't much the former could pick up from the latter. But Aaron felt that his ranger's battle capabilities were up to par for her as of now, and they didn't need much refining. But Renita could use some help from someone like Almera when it comes to non-combat skills. Do you want me to teach one of your party members about the path of a ranger? But Aaron. Almera tried to get out of the additional responsibility heading her way. But Aaron used his glib tongue again and influenced her to take Renita as her unofficial apprentice. This was not without a cost. Almera asked Aaron for a hefty amount of merps as a one-time payment, which the latter did begrudgingly from the outside. But he was laughing on the inside from experiencing how cheap it was. Of course, Aaron wasn't doing this to help his teammate but himself. He knew the importance of having a good ranger in the team. So he was investing in his future so he doesn't end up with the same fate Isaac's party had to face. The second reason Aaron did that was to get Renita off his back. The girl had lowered her persistence to learn from him. But she would follow and keep track of his movements nonetheless whenever he was around. That bothered Aaron a bit. Almera told Aaron that he should ask Renita to meet her. They'll decide on their schedule separately. And since it wasn't approved by LA, they'll have to use their personal time to do so without benefits from the academy supporting them. So you'll have to meet up with Ace Almera and she'll help you polish your ranger skills. Aaron held a meeting of his team the next day. The inter-year battle was soon going to be upon them. They needed thorough preparations just to not lose pathetically. At least almost all the first-year students were seeing it this way. Aaron's party members were no different. They were also tense about the upcoming event. Because the second-year students had become active these days. This ranking war was going to be a treat for them. Second-year students would never be happy with the minimum betting amount. So they would approach their junior opponents as soon as the battle was established. They would then demand a sky-high betting amount. This was a protection tax, the second-year students called it. If the first-year students agreed, they'll not be beaten up as badly as they might be if they didn't pay the protection tax. But that was not all. The first-year students would then be targeted by the second-year students that fought them overtly or covertly just so that they would have a rematch. And the rematch condition was the same as the previous condition, sky-high betting amount. That's why Aaron had said that it was better for his party members if they get apprenticed under an adept. The bullying would decrease a lot if you had someone standing behind you, even if only in name. Part 6 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.